Hello, and welcome back to the Quarantine Theater Company. Tonight we've got a fun read for you, Indiana Jones and the City of Gods. It's Frank Darabont's original script for the fourth movie, and it's not quite Crystal Skull, but it's kind of Crystal Skull, so one can only hope it's better than Crystal Skull. It can't get worse. Anyway, joining us tonight, Logan with the quick change. He's going to be our Indiana Jones. We had some recasting last minute. I will be Marion Ravenwood. We've got Johnny with us as Yuri Markovsky. I don't know. That's a horrible Russian accent. My apologies to anybody that speaks that language. We've got Scott joining us. He's going to be quite a few characters for us. Baron Peter something or other, and President Escalante. I accidentally deleted my notes, which is why I don't know the name. We've got Travis joining us. Yes, that'd be cool. We've got Travis joining us as Hama and Salah. And Johnny. Wait, I already got Johnny. Got Logan. Got Scott. Got Travis. George. Last but not least is George. Our scene description is amazing, and he's also going to be our Oxley. So without further ado, take it away.
All right, Indiana Jones and the City of the Gods. Screenplay by Frank Darabont, story by George Lucas. Adventure still has a name. Fade in, the Paramount logo. A dissolve transforms the mountain into exterior desert day. A real mountain in a parched land. Even the air here is sun-baked. Buzzards ride the thermals. A strange distant rumble rises and falls, teasing us. Tilt down to reveal a long ribbon of road coming at camera, heat shimmering from blacktop, a lizard sunning itself. There's that rumble again, swelling louder. Thunder on the horizon? Well, no, it's two hot rods roaring into view. They're racing full out, neck and neck, radios blasting Bill Haley and the Comet's great 1954 hit, Shake, Rattle, and Roll across the desert. The lizard scurries off. The hot rods loom large, engulfing us with noise and fury. We whip pan with them as they zip by us in the blink of an eye in a swirling cloud of dust. Exterior Atomic Cafe, Nevada Desert. And the Atomic Cafe is revealed as the dust clears. A windswept roadhouse diner with a missile-shaped neon sign. Closer angle. A man is also revealed. He's just gotten out from behind the wheel of his olive drab panel truck and is coughing and waving the dust from his face. Pushing on the man, Indiana Jones, as he peers after the hot rods with a sour look.
Damn kids.
His friend Yuri Makovsky is laughing as he gets out of the passenger side. He's got a Russian accent.
American kids, Indy, having fun. You should take a lesson.
He claps Indy on the shoulder as they head towards the diner. Music can be heard within. Wayward Wind by Goki Grant. Interior Atomic Cafe, which is coming from a Seaberg Rockola jukebox trimmed in neon and bubbling water tubes. A waitress enters frame, taking us across the diner as she navigates the room, balancing 2 plates of food and a pot of coffee. The cafe's clientele is a mix of local ranchers and off-duty Army and Air Force personnel. The waitress arrives at a booth table and sets a plate down. It's slopping over with a burger and fries. A man's hands enter frame, lift the burger off the plate. Tilt up to reveal Yuri gazing rapturously at it.
I love America.
Indy, seated across from him, can't help smiling as Yuri takes a swooning bite.
I love hamburgers. I love French fries. I love Gogi Grant and the jukebox. You know what I love more than Gogi Grant?
He raises a bottle of ketchup into view.
Ketchup. It's a miracle. In my country, such things do not exist. Here, ketchup everywhere, as much as you want.
He uncaps the ketchup, drowning his French fries. Amused, the waitress glances to Indy.
One more coffee, hon?
Please.
She freshens his cup and moves off. Yuri admires her figure.
You know what I love most of all? The beautiful lady that brings it all to me. In Russia, the waitress look like weightlifters. Here, they are all like Lana Turner. I love America.
People glance over. Yuri meets the eyes of some soldiers and gives them a big thumbs up. Indy just shrugs.
He's new.
The men smile and resume eating.
And you, my friend, what do you love?
Me?
Indy thinks a moment. He pulls a handkerchief from the pocket to reveal delicate shards of Native American pottery.
I love these.
Cut to exterior Indy's camp, desert foothills, lake day. Close up on more pottery fragments lying on the dusty ground next to a small ruler to provide scale.
Anansi pottery, classic Pueblo period, 1050 to 1300 AD.
Flash, a camera shutter clicks. Tilt up to reveal Indy kneeling over a camera on a low tripod. He winds the film to the next frame, makes a careful notation in his notebook.
They developed a very high degree of pottery skills in that period.
Yuri enters frame, putting on a tie and getting spruced up.
Words cannot describe my excitement.
Yeah, wise guy. I see you go off somewhere every day and come back empty-handed. What are you trying to dig up?
Tonight, a little company, I hope. Perhaps a trip to town. The beautiful lady with the ketchup, that is, if you lend me your truck.
Indy laughs, pulls his keys, and tosses them.
Knock yourself out, Yuri.
Yuri crouches down, becoming serious.
Indy, I want to say how good it was to meet up with you again. I thank you for sharing your encampment with me this past weeks. Yo gonna say sapo.
Nescatropalat. Sounds like goodbye.
I've signed on to a big job overseas. Expedition foreman. I leave soon. You know how it is. Adventure calls.
Yeah, well, enjoy it for me.
It no longer calls to you. Adventure, the thrill of the chase.
Yet. Not me, pal.
You're not the same man I knew all before those years ago. My friend before the war back then. Adventure had a name.
They share a wistful smile. Yuri caps Indy on the shoulder, rises, and walks away. Cut to exterior Indy's camp, desert foothills, magic hour. The panel truck rumbles off with Yuri at the wheel. Indy, feeding his tethered horse, turns and waves goodbye. Cut to exterior crest of a ridge. The camp is several hundred yards below. Indy hikes up the ridge with a Native American flute to his lips, blowing various notes, trying to get the hang of it. The beauty and quiet here are surreal, the hills painted red by the setting sun. He gets to the crest and gazes off at the endless desert. The sun is an orange ball above the horizon. Indy finishes his flute practice with a few bars of Take the A Train as we dissolve to exterior same ridge, magic hour, shortly later. Camera pushes slowly in on Indy. He's sitting comfortably against the rocks, checking a terrain map and making entries in his little notebook. He's eating a sandwich, softly humming Take the Train. The picture of contentment. Camera settles on his profile, beautifully backlit by the setting sun. As a mile or so away, a long trail of dust appears, racing across the desert floor. The faint sound of an engine makes Indy look up. There's a vehicle out there going like a bat out of hell. Suddenly, two more trails of dust come from the opposite direction, racing out to meet the first. Indy can't help smiling a bit.
Damn kids.
He pulls his binoculars from his knapsack, raises them. Binocular POV, sweep across the desert, pinning the first vehicle as it races along. It's not a hot rod, it's a panel truck, just like Indy's. Same rounded silhouette and everything. The driver slams on the brakes in a big swirl of dust and hops out, waiting for the other vehicles to arrive. It's Yuri. Indy peers over his binoculars, surprised. He raises the binoculars again, pans them around. Binocular POV. Swish pan to other two vehicles. Two military jeeps race along, precariously loaded with over a dozen men between them. A few are in civilian clothes, but most wear military fatigues. Among them are 3 MPs. The jeeps stop at the panel truck. Men jump down a flurry of activity. Weapons are handed out, orders given. 2 soldiers rush to Indy's truck and slap magnetic skins on the doors. The skins are olive green with white stars, instantly turning Indy's truck into a military vehicle. The back doors are swung open and men pile inside with weapons. The vehicles head off together, directly into the setting sun, due west. Indy lowers his binoculars, stunned. He grabs his map, jabs his finger on his present position, drags his finger west, close on map, and stops. His fingers on a circled area marked restricted military zone. Indy gazes up after the departing vehicles. Boy, does he not want to get involved in this.
Nuts.
Cut to exterior Indy's camp moments later. Indy spurs his horse with a wild cry, galloping full speed down the mountain path. Exterior desert, dusk. Indy races across the desert, his horse's hooves pounding up dust in the gathering darkness. He reins back, pausing to get his bearings. He looks around, sees taillights in the distance. He spurs his horse again, galloping in pursuit. Camera end frames on a weathered sign. Military area, highly restricted. Civilians turn back. Cut to exterior desert hills, night. Through a break in the rocks, we catch a glimpse of the vehicles traveling below. Indy gallops into frame in the foreground, guiding his horse along a bouldered path, tracking him. He hears the vehicles slowing. He dismounts, scurries to a hidden vantage point. Peering around a boulder, he gets a limited view of what's happening below. 3 figures jump from the idling vehicles and hurry towards the shadowy rocks. It's Yuri leading the way, accompanied by a pair of MPs. Yuri turns, waves the vehicles on. Indy climbs up to get a better view of where the vehicles are heading, and we boom up to reveal a huge military base, lights twinkling in the desert air. Indy jumps down, hurrying after Yuri and the MPs. Another area, and arrives at the last place he saw them. They're gone, no sign at all. Indy checks the area and notices a hole in the ground, mostly hidden by loose scrub. He kicks the scrub aside and drops to his hands and knees, seeing faint light below, realizing it's a tunnel. Indy's head pops in upside down, looks around. He squeezes through and falls into a very cramped tunnel. A long string of light bulbs glowing dimly on a wire leading off into darkness. There's just enough room to crawl in here. Indy goes as fast as he can. Exterior military base, and his head thrust out of the ground, suddenly wearing a hat of fake turf. He tosses it aside and scurries out to get his bearings. He's inside the compound near the perimeter fence. This area is a secluded backwater of the base. There are no barracks or people here. It's an experimental area with rows of huge hangars and mysterious dark buildings, beyond which are miles of aircraft runways. Approaching engines draw Andy's attention. Hugging the shadows, he races along the fence toward exterior guard booth / entry gate. Behind the booth, Andy trips over something in the darkness and goes sprawling on his face. He rolls over and sees its 2 unconscious MPs lying bound and gagged in the weeds. Andy glances up. The top half of the guard booth is glassed all around. He rises, peering in through the back window. Fake MP number 1 stands just outside the booth door with his back to us. Beyond him, Indy can see the jeeps and panel truck rumble through the outer gate and stop at the inner security gate. Fake MP number 2 steps to the lead jeep.
Authorization, please.
Stanislav, the driver, hands him a piece of paper and mutters in a Russian accent.
Button that collar, idiot. Try to look like soldier.
The MP complies, glowering, then turns.
Clear.
Andy ducks from sight as fake MP number 1 steps into the booth, picks up a handset and thumbs the toggle. This is gate 12. Protocol Tango Hotel X-ray 1138. We have vehicles. Authorization is good. Request you unlock inner gate.
Roger.
A red light on the panel goes off. A green light goes on. A buzzer is heard and the inner gate swings open via remote. The vehicles enter the compound. Yuri darts from the darkness across the way and leaps into a jeep, waving them forward. Angle shifts from the departing vehicles to tight on Indy, crouching behind the booth. His gaze goes to a dumpster filled with discarded materials. On the ground next to empty paint cans is a stack of 2x4 ends. In the booth, fake MP number 2 joins his partner in the booth, grumbling.
Ruskies, if they didn't pay so good, I'd hand them a headache, especially that Stanislav. Every time I turn around, he busts my chops.
He turns around and gets his chops busted. Wham! A 2x4 in the face. He goes down like a sack of cement. Indy in the doorway swings his 2x4 again. MP number 1 ducks, and Indy misses, bashing out a window instead. The man yanks his sidearm, but Indy slams him into the wall, and the gun fires into the floor. A quick, desperate struggle in the cramped booth, the men grappling at close quarters. Indy's keeping his adversary's gun hand pinned and points away as best he can. The gun fires a few more times, the shot's going wild. Indy punches the guy's lights out. He steps over him, grabs the handset off the panel, and thumbs the toggle.
Gate 12 here. Help. Spies are infiltrating the base. Bring guns, bombs, mean dogs.
His voice trails off. Tilt down off his look to reveal a smoking bullet hole in the communications panel. Indy does a slow burn, tosses the handset aside. He pulls his binoculars and steps to the door. Binoculars POV. The vehicles stop at a huge dark hangar down the road. A large rolling door slides open to let them in. Indy lowers the binoculars, wondering what the hell to do. He glances at the unconscious spies as we wipe to interior hangar, night. Indy looms from the shadows wearing MP khakis and helmet. The hangar is a huge cavern filled with, well, everything. It's a maze of gantries, catwalks, experimental arcana, machinery, and mountains of crates marked top secret. He presses on, hearing voices ahead.
What do you mean it's no good enough? That was the deal.
The deal is changed.
Another area. Shadowy men led by Yuri are arrayed in an open area near Indy's panel truck, the rear doors of which stand open and awaiting cargo. The scene is lit from above by China hats, putting tense and sweaty faces into heavy light and shadow.
The deal can be changed. Arrangements can be made. This has been a year in planning.
He motions Stanislav to his side. Stanislav raises an attaché case, unleashing it. It's full of neatly stacked money. Angle shifts to reveal Professors Quimby and Avery, two American scientists. Quimby's a mousy little fellow with a pocket watch in his vest. Avery's taller and stouter, wearing a rather distinctive pale yellow plaid suit. Most significantly, a 3-foot-tall round metal canister sits on the floor, securely clamped to an unusual titanium frame pallet with rubber shocks. On the canister, the word plutonium is stenciled under an atomic symbol.
Travis.
Yes, we talked it over. Considering the risks we're taking, it's not enough.
We're offering 20 pounds of our highest grade plutonium, plus this, of course.
Oddly enough, he raises a bowling ball bag into view. It's incongruous and highly distinctive, made all the more so by the red, green, and black tartan pattern on its sides.
You tell me, Mr. Makovsky. What's that worth to your comrade Khrushchev?
Angle on fake MP number 3, tensely watching the proceedings. Hands reach out of the darkness behind him and yank him into the shadows.
The question is, Professor Quimby, what is it worth to you?
And Indy steps out to take his place. The overhead lights and his MP helmet cast a deep shadow over his face. Resume scene.
Professor Avery suggested we double the fee. I quite agree.
Very well.
A gunshot rings out. Yuri has fired a small pistol from inside his overcoat pocket. A smoking hole appears in the fabric. Professor Avery clutches his heart, blood suddenly trickling through his fingers. He drops dead at Quimby's feet. Quimby is frozen with fear as Yuri draws closer. Yuri takes the attaché case of money from Stanislav and offers it to Quimby.
Now, you don't have to split it 2 ways. Your fee is double.
Yuri takes the bowling ball bag and hands it off to the Thin Man, an extremely thin and sinister individual dressed all in black. He looks like death in a Homburg hat. Make no mistake. There's enormous power coiled in his wraith-like frame. His rat-thin face displays an old, livid scar that runs forehead to chin, bisecting a milky, dead eye.
You have arrangements to make. Go!
The Thin Man nods and departs like an oiled shadow, vanishing towards the exit. Yuri snaps his fingers at his men. They hop to it, scurrying to load the plutonium in the truck. Indy jumps in to help, brushing past Yuri's elbow, his face shadowed by the MP's helmet. He grabs a corner of the pallet and helps lift it off the floor. They maneuver it through the rear doors of the panel truck, slide it in the last few feet.
The body, quickly.
Everybody turns, rushing to Professor Avery lying dead on the floor, preparing to lift him, except Indy, who goes unnoticed around the back of the truck and strides to the driver's open window. A Russian driver is at the wheel, eyeing the rearview mirror and waiting for a go signal. He tosses Indy an irritated look. Genado?
No loading zone, pal.
Wham! Indy punches him through the open window. The guy tumbles from view. Indy jumps in, fires up the engine. He jams it in gear and floors it. Tires spinning smoke. The truck wipes from view, revealing the spy is standing there lugging a dead guy in a yellow suit. Yuri rushes forward.
Wait, come back, you idiot.
Interior, exterior truck. Indy gets to the end of the aisle and spins the wheel through a hard 90-degree turn. The truck's rear door is banging around like open shutters. The path ahead is blocked. He spins the wheel 90 degrees again and is suddenly going back the way he came, only down a different aisle. Yuri and his men see the truck coming back. They make a lateral dash through the machinery and crates into the next aisle. Yuri is waving his arms and hollering for the truck to stop. And he sees Indy at the wheel. Stunned, Yuri spins towards camera as the truck blasts by him. The men open fire with Russian burp guns on full auto, tearing up the back of Indy's truck with bullets. Yuri waves his arms, hollering.
No, cease fire, cease fire. You'll hit the plutonium, you fools. Aim for the driver. Go, go.
An ad scramble. Somebody hits a switch, turning on the main overhead lights. Men pile into the two Jeeps and peel off in pursuit with Stanislav driving Jeep number 1. The rest, led by Yuri, pursue on foot through the maze of machinery. The chase, inside the hangar, and it is a maze, the world's biggest, stuffed with everything you can imagine, creating roads in countless directions, but no obvious way out. Andy drives like a maniac, turning this way and that, looking for an exit, while the Jeeps hurtle along on parallel or intersecting courses, trying to hem him in. One moment converging, the next being forced to split off in different directions, giving Mr. Spielberg the opportunity to stage the most breathtakingly outrageous near misses ever put on film. Gunfire is erupting from all directions as men in Jeeps are on foot, try to kill Indy or shoot out his tires. Interior, exterior truck. Andy takes a tire-shrieking turn and floors it down a long, straight aisle. His eyes go wide as, up ahead, Jeep number 1 hurtles into his path with Stanislav at the wheel, coming right at him. The man in the Jeep's passenger seat raises his burp gun and fires off a burst. Andy ducks as the bullets stitch a line of holes across his windshield. Andy slams on his brakes, throws it in reverse, and floors it again, backing up at full speed. Both vehicles are now going in the same direction. Suddenly, Indy's eyes go wide again. Through the open rear doors, he sees Jeep number 2 appear, coming up fast from behind. With moments to spare, Indy spins the wheel, sending the truck into a sliding 90-degree turn, still backing up, abruptly clearing the aisle and revealing the two Jeeps to each other, coming head on. Both drivers hit the brakes. Too late, they collide, with Jeep number 2 tipping onto its side and sliding, bolting men through the air. And just when everybody's coming to the senses, Andy nails them again, flooring it out of there in forward gear. He plows the Jeeps and off he goes. Stanislav furiously cranks his ignition. His Jeep restarts. Still in the chase, he takes off after Indy with 3 men hanging on for dear life, leaving the others behind. Yuri and his men run up to gather the day's troops. They start tipping the remaining Jeep back onto its wheels, but...
This way.
They all look. Quimby's clutching his attaché case, pointing.
They have to come back around. We can cut them off.
Everybody runs off with Quimby leading the way. The truck and Jeep hurtle past, wiping frame, as in the background, Quimby leads the men swarming through a shadowy forest of machinery and blades running to intercept. In the truck, Indy cranks the wheel. He looks ahead, seeing Quimby and Yuri run up and stop, the others at their heels. Weapons are raised and cocked as the truck nears. Much to everybody's surprise, Quimby motions sternly for them to hold their fire.
What are you doing?
The truck roars by. Quimby smiles at a huge sign above them. Engine test area, extreme hazard. In the truck, Indy glances back puzzled. They let him pass. He laughs, but the laugh dies as he realizes where he is. On both sides of him, aiming inward, massive jet engines were bolted horizontally to the floor. 2 awesome rows, 1 on each side, at least a dozen engines to a row. Yuri and Quimby. The Jeep races by in pursuit. Quimby turns and we tilt down to reveal a control panel on a steel podium. 2 rows of big red buttons match the layout of the jet engines. Quimby punches the last 2 buttons, top and bottom. The 2 jet engines face each other across the aisle at the end of the rows. They work up with a rising turbine whine and then kaboom! Massive eruptions of white-hot flames shoot out. The truck, creating an instant barrier of fire. Indy locks up the brakes and comes to a screeching stop within yards of the jet-propelled inferno. The roar is deafening. The Jeep stops some 10 yards behind the truck. Men jump out brandishing weapons.
Out of the truck.
Indy sighs, takes his hands off the steering wheel and raises them, preparing to get out of the truck, favoring Quimby. When suddenly the control panel clicks and buzzes. Quimby looks down, sees a message flash red. Commence random firing sequence. His eyes go wide. Interior, exterior truck, and so do Indy's. He's hearing another jet engine starting to whine. He glances over. It's right next to him. He jams the truck in reverse and peels rubber, backing up as boom, the engine fires, barely missing him. The engines start firing in fast, random overlapping sequence. Huge pillars of flame blasting out and shutting down again within seconds. On, off, on, off. The only warning being a few seconds of turbine whine preceding each explosion. The 3 spies from Jeep number 1 turn and run screaming for their lives, trying to escape the corridor of flaming death. 2 of the men are caught on the run, instantly incinerated. Stanislav spins the Jeep around and floors it, trying to get back out. It looks like he's going to make it. He's only got a few yards left to go. Boom! An engine blast catches the Jeep. It catapults right past Yuri and Quimby like a flaming cartwheel. Disgusted, Yuri moves off, leaving Quimby frantically pressing buttons. Interior, exterior truck. Indy's frantically driving the truck forwards and backwards, avoiding the jet blast by mere feet, jamming the gears, flooring it again and again, wheels spinning and throwing up smoke. He's barely 1 step ahead of the flames, judging where they'll be by the whining sounds that precede. Suddenly, the truck bucks violently and gives off a horrible gear-shredding sound. Beneath the truck, and the train falls off, clinging to the floor in a smoking heap. Interior, exterior truck. Indy raises his right arm into view. The entire gear shift assembly has come off his hand. Suddenly, the driver he punched out earlier comes to and sits up in confusion. Rack focused to a huge jet engine next to him, beginning to whine. Indy whispers hoarsely.
Run.
Indy jumps out. The driver just looks around. Yeah.
Change.
And boom! Indy dives clear as a blast of flame punches through the panel truck, buckling the sheet metal into molten fragments and spinning the vehicle completely upside down. Yuri's men see Indy run clear. They open fire. Indy runs a gauntlet of flaming jet blasts while ducking bullets, shucking and jiving for all he's worth. It's a deadly game of red light, green light with the igniting flames. Indy jumping back one moment, diving forward the next. And he finally makes it out the far end, breaking into a full-out run. Suddenly, from out of the shadows, wham! Indy gets body slammed by somebody and goes flying. He crashes into a row of steel shelves and sends them over like dominoes, scattering engine parts everywhere. Indy sits up painfully, shaking his head to clear it and gazes up to see what hit him. It's Yuri. He gives Indy a wry shake of his head, offers his hand to him to help him up. Indy takes his hand, pulls himself off the ground, and rams his head into Yuri's stomach, driving him back. More shelves go flying. Yuri manages to stay on his feet, yanks Indy upright, and punches him so hard it spins Indy around. Indy lets Yuri have it right back, landing a solid punch that snaps Yuri's head back and bloodies his nose. Yuri just shakes it off, smiles at Indy through bloody teeth, and wham! Indy gets nailed with an uppercut that lifts him clean off his feet. He flies back through the air, angle on cockpit, and lands jarringly in what appears to be a small cockpit simulator of some sort. It's got hardly any instruments, just a few dials and a pull handle marked fire. Indy tries to sit up, but Yuri shoves him back in, pinning him. Indy's got no leverage. Yuri wraps his hands around Indy's throat, choking him. Through clenched teeth.
Sorry about your truck.
Wham! Yuri punctuates his line with a piledriver punch down into Indy's face. In return,
Sorry about your plutonium.
wham! Indy punctuates that with a piledriver punch up into Yuri's face. Suddenly, the other Russians arrive, two of them pinning Indy in the cockpit by the shoulders. Yuri rises.
The plutonium is fine. Fireproof casing. We got what we came for. All you did was inconvenience me.
What are pals for?
We kill him now?
Not just yet.
Yuri pulls a slender wooden case from his inner pocket, opens it. The interior is felt lined. He pulls out a huge hypodermic needle filled with clear liquid. Indy's eyes go wide. Yuri uncaps the hypo and taps it to clear the bubbles. He bends down, preparing to jam the hypo into Indy's neck. Indy glances at the pull handle marked fire. With a "what have I got to lose" look on his face, he decides to see what happens when he pulls it. He reaches over, yanks it, and is stunned as the rear end of the cockpit ignites with a blast of flame and an enormous roar. The Russians jerk back in shock. Yuri has a startled beat of realization, jumps on Indy, and they're both instantly whisked from sight. Wider angle, as the cockpit turns out to be a rocket sled hurtling along a set of rails. Indy and Yuri hang on for dear life as the sled goes screaming down its track. Exterior hangar, night. And explodes through a set of wooden doors into the night. Once clear, an even bigger booster of flame kicks in, hurtling them ever faster. Up ahead, a section of the outer gate opens automatically, heralded by spinning lights. They zip through. Exterior desert, and go blazing down the rails across the desert. On the rocket sled, both men are screaming and holding on. The sled goes faster and faster still, everything vibrating like crazy. Yuri tries to pull Indy out of the seat, but Indy lands a solid punch to the Russian's nose that flips him over the back of the sled. Yuri's now hanging on by his fingertips, his body horizontal in the slipstream above the roaring rocket flame. The contrail is enormous, over 30 feet long. Indy manages to twist around in the seat, getting properly positioned. Fighting the G-forces every inch of the way, he grabs the safety harness and raises it up to his chest, trying to get it buckled. He almost gets it, but with a mighty effort, Yuri thrusts his arm forward and loops it around Indy's neck. Now Indy's being choked again, not to mention being pulled inexorably out of his seat. The Russians howling in his ear, both their faces getting plastered back by sheer G-force. Indy sees the hypo on the floor near his foot. He reaches for it with straining fingers, manages to grab it. In danger of being yanked out of the sled, Indy shifts the hypo up and stabs it repeatedly over his shoulder at Yuri. Yuri keeps avoiding it, whipping his head from side to side. He gets Indy's wrist in an iron grip, turning the hypo back on Indy now, straining to jam it into his neck. Indy throws several quick punches over his shoulder with his free hand, popping Yuri in the nose. Yuri's grip on Indy wrenches loose. The hypo falls back into the cockpit as the Russian drops back, again hanging by his fingertips. And he forces himself back down into his seat. He tries again to buckle his safety harness, his hands fighting to overcome the G-forces. He almost gets it, but suddenly the sled's booster shuts down. Indy is hurled forward as the gears reverse, banging his head off the control panel and cracking a glass dial. Yuri goes sailing over Indy's head, thrown clear and vanishing from view. The sled comes to a stop, shutting down to complete silence. Groaning, Indy clutches his bleeding head, trying not to pass out. It's an effort of will, but he stays conscious. And just when he looks up, wham! Yuri sucker punches him, knocking him out as we fade to exterior desert night. Indy's slumped unconscious in the sled, blood trickling down his face. A hand reaches into frame, rolls up his sleeve, and jabs him with the hypodermic. Indy starts coming to. More hands reach in and grab him, hauling him out of the sled. The Russians sit him on the ground. Yuri crouches before him. Indy rubs his arm, realizing they injected him.
What was in the hypo?
Something to make you cooperate. You have to tell me. Who else knows about this? Is my mission at risk? Is a trap being set?
Go piss up a rope.
Ugh. The drug requires a few seconds. I regret this comes between us, my friend.
It's an old American saying. With friends like you.
Who needs enemies? Yes, I've heard it. Sadly, true in our case. As it turns out.
Indy swoons as the drug kicks in. He almost nods out. The men around him prop him up. Yuri slaps him to keep him conscious, grabs him by the jaw and looks him in the eye.
Who else knows? Or is it just you being stupid and meddling in things you shouldn't?
Nobody knows. It's just me.
Yuri nods. He knows Indy's telling the truth, softly.
You should have stuck to digging up pottery, Betrayal. Any last words?
I love America.
Indy passes out and falls back with a thump. Yuri looks to his men.
Take him with the other one.
Wipe to exterior desert, morning. A black 1948 Cadillac races across the desert flats. Two Russians are in the car, both wearing black trench coats and black hats. Camera drifts back, closing on the trunk. In the trunk, where we find Indy painfully coming to. He looks around and discovers he's lying next to dead Professor Avery in his pale yellow plaid suit. Indy feels around in the dark, trying to find a way out of his predicament. He finds a shovel and raises it, mind racing for a plan. In the car, Russian number 1 studies a map in the passenger seat.
This is it, right here.
The car stops in the middle of nowhere. The Russians get out, circle around to the trunk.
Zjatnik mir prosto stavnio mir zidis. Yetnyo imniet smirsia.
Zatsky, yes, Zatsky, now do mine. Prosto delay candidate Russian.
Oh, God. They open the trunk and nothing, just 2 inert bodies. They reach over Professor Avery and grab Indy first, hauling him out by his arms and legs. They stagger about 10 feet from the car and deposit him on the ground. While in the background, Professor Avery apparently comes to life and gets out of his trunk. It's Indy, wearing the pale yellow plaid suit and clutching the shovel. The Russians sense movement behind them, but too late. Indy whacks them both with the shovel, laying them out flat. Indy looks desperately around, trying to get his bearings. He sees something, shields his eyes against the sun. There's a town about a half a mile away. Indy jumps in the car, cranks the engine, and peels off towards the town. As the Cadillac dwindles, the Russians painfully come to. They stagger to their feet and realize their car is leaving without them. It's already several hundred yards away. Russian number 2 pulls a burp gun from under his trench coat and opens fire. Tracking with the Cadillac, and the back of the car is torn up by bullets. Indy ducks as the rear window blows out and the dashboard gets chewed up. Worst yet, the tires blow out. The car slews to a smoking stop, steam billowing from the radiator. Indy jumps out. He's halfway to the town. He starts running the rest of the way. Far behind him, the Russians are 2 black specks pursuing him. Exterior town, day. A prim, neat little town of white picket fences. Indy comes running up a street and pauses. There's nobody in sight.
Hello? Hello? Help!
No answer. He glances back. The Russians are closing. Indy dashes off, losing himself between the houses. New angle, and he comes around into a backyard as the Russians appear on the street in the background, trying to see where he went. They split up. Russian number one comes this way with a pistol in his hand, and he keeps going right through somebody's laundry line. Various angles, and manages to keep one step ahead of his pursuers, dodging them by inches. He gets to a back door, dashes inside, interior house, day, and finds himself in a kitchen where he presses up against a heavy-duty refrigerator. Russian number one drifts past the window outside as Indy holds his breath. The Russian moves off. Indy crosses the archway leading to the dining room.
Hello? Anybody?
No answer, but he's hearing faint music. Somebody's in the house. It draws him into a hallway. Indy moves up the hallway as the music grows louder. It's a bouncy tune from the Howdy Doody show. Living room. Indy peeks in. A family is seated with their backs to us, watching Howdy Doody on a black and white TV set. Mom, dad, and 2 kids. Indy enters in a breathless rush.
Look, I'm sorry, but it's an emergency. There are Russian spies outside in your town right now, and they're both armed, and
Nobody's moved. Their attention is riveted to the screen.
what's wrong with you people?
He steps forward and grabs Dad's shoulder. New angle. Only to realize Mom and Dad aren't people. They're mannequins. Indy looks at the kids. They're fake too. Blank, lifeless faces stare at the TV screen where, why howdy, haven't you guessed yet? It's an imaginary place.
Oh boy, let's have some fun.
Push in for a tight, sweaty close-up on Indy, stunned, trying to process what's happening. Suddenly, an air raid siren starts wailing. Indy gazes up, listening.
Oh, that can't be good.
He runs from the room. Exterior house, day, and onto the front lawn. A mannequin mailman is frozen at the mailbox delivering mail. Across the street, a mannequin pedestrian is frozen in mid-stride, walking a fake dog on a leash. Up the street, a group of mannequin kids are frozen on their bicycles, while a mannequin driver waves cheerily at them from behind the wheel of his motionless Buick. On a porch, a mannequin mom serves cookies to her mannequin family. The siren is wailing eerily, rising and falling. The Russians appear, running into the street to listen, faces pale, their mission to kill Indy momentarily forgotten. Indy walks into the street, shielding his eyes against the sun, scanning the rooftops. Camera comes around, revealing there, over the rooftops, a few hundred yards out of town, stands a metal frame tower festooned with sirens and loudspeakers, not to mention a Fat Man-style nuclear bomb lying in its cradle on the tower platform. Suddenly, a male voice comes over the loudspeakers, booming and echoing across miles of desert.
All personnel take final positions. Countdown to detonation is commencing at T-2 minutes and counting.
Indy and the Russians trade a profound look of, holy shit.
T-1 minute, 55 seconds and counting.
Indy turns and runs out of town. The Russians take off after him, hauling ass for all they're worth to catch up. Exterior desert. Tracking shot brings Indy away from town across the flats, running as fast as he can. The Russians not far behind.
You idiot, shut the car!
Zach needs need big eater. You bet.
T-1 minute, 20 seconds and counting.
Indy suddenly stops, panting hard, knowing this is pointless. Camera pushes in as he thinks fast, making a desperate decision. The Russians run past him, hollering for him to keep going. Instead, Indy turns back. The Russians are stunned, glancing back over their shoulders as they keep running.
T-1 minute, 10 seconds and counting.
Tracking with Indy, running back to town, pushing himself beyond his limits as
T-55 seconds and counting.
exterior town. Indy comes running up Main Street near collapse. He pauses to catch his breath, pressing on as
T-25 seconds and counting.
interior house. Indy bursts in, racing through the rooms and up the hallway, dogged by the cheery Howdy Doody theme music, sung to the happy tune of Tara Boomberry. It's howdy
Doody time. It's howdy doody time. It's howdy doody time.
Time.
T-15 seconds and counting.
Indy cuts around the corner into the kitchen. He throws open the fridge. It's full of shelving and groceries. He frantically yanks the stuff out, shelves and all, as
T-5 seconds and counting.
Indy jumps in the fridge, slams the door,
T-0.
and the screen goes white. In the incredible glare, slow-mo and overexposed, we see mannequins flying apart in the nuclear blast furnace like leaves in a gale. Bodies igniting like match heads at flashpoint. Kids getting swept off their bikes, mailman and pedestrian going airborne, turning to cinders, mom and her cookies sailing away on a wind of white fire. The Buick and its waving driver tumbling down the street like a flaming toy as walls collapse and roofs fly away. Exterior desert, and the awesome glare subsides just enough to see the Russians running. A blast wave of heat and debris comes rocketing across the flats, turning sand to glass. And in the instant before the blast wave consumes them, the last thing the Russians see is a refrigerator zipping past right between them, riding the blast wave. Both Russians are instantly vaporized. The blast wave reaches us, and we become engulfed/blinded by dust. Dissolve to exterior desert. And the dust billows away to reveal a scorched, half-melted refrigerator lying in a pile of debris. We hear thumping from within. The latch gives, and the door swings up with a heave. Indy emerges, unsteady on his feet. Interior forward observation bunker, while a soldier scans the blast zone with binoculars.
Sir, there's something moving.
A general raises his own binoculars, focuses in softly.
Oh my God.
Exterior desert. Indy staggers towards us, gazing up with horror and awe. Camera comes around to reveal Indiana Jones and the Mushroom Cloud. The cloud roils higher, ever higher, dominating the sky like the band of God itself. Andy stands frozen, transfixed by the sight, until the sound of engines makes him turn. Military vehicles are converging, soldiers jumping out and leveling weapons. Andy raises his hands in surrender as we cut to interior decontamination room day. Andy's in a decontamination shower, naked, holding onto an overhead bar while men in radiation suits scrub him raw. Angle shifts to reveal CIA agent number 1 in a shadowy room, watching through a two-way mirror. CIA agent number 2 appears at his side.
Who is he? The luckiest man alive. That refrigerator he hid in was an old Westinghouse model, lined with lead.
Cut to interior interrogation room. Andy, exhausted, sits pinned in the glare of a low overhead light in a dark, dark room. A reel-to-reel tape recorder spins slowly on a round table before him. He's surrounded by 7 shadowy men in suits and ties, their faces unseen throughout.
Told you everything.
You've told us nothing. Nothing that makes sense. You expect us to believe you unknowingly harbored a Russian spy, that you had no part in this?
I tried to stop them.
Right, by giving them your truck.
Yuri's broke down that morning. They said it would take 3 days to get the part in, so he borrowed mine.
And that's when you supposedly tried to stop them.
Hell yes, I tried to stop them. Just ask that scientist, that little weasel, what, Quimby, has he talked?
He's in custody and willing to name you as a conspirator.
What, in return for leniency? He's lying. He's trying to save his own skin.
Unlike you, you're just a patriotic American, a guy who believes the United States should maintain her nuclear superiority at all costs. Correct me if I'm wrong.
I'm not sure I'd tie my patriotism to a belief in nuclear weapons.
So you feel the Soviets should dominate that area?
I didn't say that.
What are you seeing?
Indy hesitates again, knowing he might be screwed here.
I'm saying I'm not sure anybody should have the A-bomb. I think we lack the wisdom for that kind of power.
America lacks the wisdom? Did I hear that right?
A strong defensive posture is the policy of the United States government. A government, Dr. Jones, you'd prefer to see us fall victim to our enemies?
Am I being charged for something? Aside from surviving a nuclear blast? If so, I'd like to invite my lawyer to the philosophical debate.
Charged? No, not yet. But I wouldn't go making plans to leave the country anytime soon if I were you.
Look, just call Dean Stalling at my university, or Senator Tashlin, or Congressman Freeling. He's known me since I was a kid. Or hell, there are people in your organization you can ask. They knew me back in the OSS days during the war. They'll vouch for me. My reputation is beyond reproach. You understand what I'm saying? I have friends.
Pause. Man number 1, his face still unseen, approaches the table and crushes out a cigarette in an ashtray. Andy blinks up, trying to see the man's face, but all he gets is a voice.
I think you'll find, Dr. Jones, that you're wrong about that.
Cut 2, exterior Marshall University morning. The trees blaze with color. Arriving students and teachers cross the campus grounds. Andy arrives in an open-top BMW 328 Roadster, definitely a bachelor's car, and an eclectic one at that. He gets out, grabs his briefcase, and heads for the main building. As a black Dodge eases into frame with an FBI agent named McKimson at the wheel, he's watching Indy's every move. Indy glances back, glowering, fully aware that he's being tailed. He proceeds into the building as McKimson pulls out a little black notebook and makes a careful notation. 7:44 a.m. Subject arrives in U. Interior Dean's office morning. Andy leans over Dean Carl Stalling's desk.
What do you mean I'm taking a leave of absence? This message is just starting.
No, don't get upset.
You think this is upset? This isn't even close to upset. I am only mildly annoyed and warming up.
Indiana, please, sit down, listen.
Andy takes a deep breath. With an effort of will, he sits down and presents an air of calm.
I'm listening.
Are you aware federal agents showed up here yesterday and ransacked your office for all your files?
You didn't stop them? But you're dean of this school. They had no right.
They had every right. These weren't vandals. These were grown men with federal warrants. Don't you understand what's going on here? Hasn't it sunk in yet?
He slides a newspaper across to Indy. The front page shows a photo of Indy under a headline. Local professor suspected of treason. Is he red? Indy absorbs this, rocked to his heels.
The government is building a case against you, and they won't stop until they have one.
So I'm fired. Is that it?
It's a leave of absence until this thing blows over.
Taught here 27 years, Carl. I have tenure.
It's not my decision. It comes directly from the Board of Regents. They feel this university cannot be embroiled in this kind of scandal. I'm sorry. My hands are tied.
Cut 2, interior Indy's classroom, moments later, morning. Students have arrived and are just settling in. The new teacher is chalking his name on the blackboard.
My name is. Oh,
Yes?
Mr. Sullivan. That's my name.
Suddenly, Indy appears at the doorway. The room goes quiet. He enters slowly, goes to the desk, all eyes on him. He opens his briefcase on the desk, starts quietly gathering his personal items and placing them inside. The silence is thick. He glances up and sees the faces of his students. Their expressions are anguished. Indy clears his throat.
Mr. Sullivan will be filling in for me while I'm gone. I'm certain he is an excellent teacher, and I expect you'll treat him with the same respect you've always treated me. My not being here does not excuse your efforts as regards to your studies. In plain English, no slacking off in my absence. I can promise you a typically unforgiving midterm. Mr. Sullivan will see to it.
He places a final item in his briefcase, latches it. He looks up and realizes that some of his students have tears on their face. Indy is deeply moved, but keeps his voice steady.
It's been my privilege to be your teacher. Good luck.
He picks up his briefcase, tucks his potted plant under his arm, and heads for the door. He stops halfway, tight on Indy, and turns back, gazing up at his students.
There's one thing my father taught me. It's self-reliance. It means thinking for yourself. Never let them close your minds. Never be told what to think. God gave you a brain for a reason.
Cut 2, exterior, campus museum, night. The museum fronts a park-like square under a sky full of stars. At first, we think the area is deserted, but then we hear,
It happened in Monterey a long time ago. I met her in Monterey in old Mexico.
Indy enters frame holding a bottle of scotch.
Stars and steel guitars and luscious lips as red as wine. Broke somebody's heart and I'm afraid that it was mine.
He knocks back a swig. Headlights suddenly creep into view in the background. Stop. It's that black Dodge again.
Crying out loud, let a guy get pie-eyed in peace, will you?
In the Dodge, Agent McKimson is still keeping tabs on Indy. He kills the engine. Through the windshield, we see Indy step off the grass, crossing towards the museum. Indy pauses halfway, lifts the neck of the bottle like a microphone, and bellows towards the car.
My indiscreet heart longs for that sweetheart that I left in old Monterey.
He staggers on, vanishing up the museum steps. Unflappable, McKimson pulls out his little notebook to make an entry. Interior museum rotunda. Dark and moody, with just the night lights glowing. We find Indy moving along the displays, admiring them.
Telling you, Marcus. You really nailed my head to the wall this time. They took my job, they froze my bank accounts, and get this. They want to try me for treason. Can you beat that? Treason. Me.
Indy walks to the center of the rotunda. Camera brings us into an over the shoulder of some unseen person.
Now I ask you, does that sound reasonable? I mean, really? Marcus, have you ever met a more red, white, black, and blue guy than me?
He approaches the figure. As he steps close, camera comes around to reveal a life-size bronze statue of Marcus Brody occupying the center of the rotunda. It's a flawless likeness, capturing even the warmth of Marcus's cocked grin. Indy glances down at the plaque, which reads, Marcus Brody, in memoriam, 1882-1952.
Sure do miss you, pal. Wish you were here right now.
Andy turns away, wiping the mist from his eyes as he regards the museum. He moves back to the display cases containing rare and beautiful objects, some of which we recognize. In fact, there's the Cross of Coronado from Last Crusade.
Look at this place. Look what we made of it, you and me. The effort that went into these exhibits. Fractured leg, dislocated shoulder, minor concussion.
He comes to the next display, which contains a familiar item, the small gold fertility goddess from Raiders. Lying in the display next to it is Indy's famous leather satchel.
Took some lumps getting this one back, huh? Half this stuff is ours, pal. We paid for them in faith, hard work, and broken bones. In fact,
a booze-fueled idea is forming. He tosses Brody a sly look.
I'm taking him with me.
He tries the display case, but it's locked. He unhooks a brass stanchion from its velvet rope, picks it up, and rams it right through the glass with a god-awful loud crash. Andy looks at Brody's statue, puts a finger to his lips. He grabs the satchel out first, slings it over his neck. Then he reaches in for the idol and stops. He notices the goddess is sitting on a pressure-sensitive pad. Cued by Andy's look, camera follows the connected wires across and then up the inside wall of the cabin. Andy glances up and sees an alarm bell mounted on the wall of the museum up in the ceiling, one of dozens. Andy thinks a moment. Then a few quick cuts show Andy duplicating his attempt from the opening of Raiders. He whips out his handkerchief, lays it flat on the floor, dumps sand into it from a public ashtray, ties the ends up to make a bag of sand, and then we're back to the display case. Andy pauses, judging the weight of the idol by eye. As we saw him 2 years ago, he dumps a little excess sand from the bag to get the weight just right and does a smooth switch. For a moment, it looks like he made it. Andy smiles, and then all the bells go off. He looks up. Crap. Exterior museum, night. McKimson jumps from his car, hearing the alarm. Interior museum. Andy stuffs the idol into his satchel, starts grabbing other things out of the case. Suddenly, an elderly black museum guard named Jackson comes racing around the corner, stunned.
Dr. Jones, what on earth do you think you're doing?
Indy's abashed like a kid caught stealing.
I was just
You were just drunk as a monkey. I can smell you from here. Indiana Jones, you ought to be ashamed of yourself. What would your father say?
You're not going to tell him, are you?
Looky here. I'm going back down to the basement and finish my sandwich and coffee. If you're gone when I get back and there ain't a damn thing missing, then I never saw you.
He turns and walks away, leaving a very embarrassed Indiana Jones. After a few moments, the alarm turns off. Indy turns back towards the display case and sees Agent McKimson standing outside the glass entry doors watching. Indy gets pissed off all over again.
You going to write that in your little notebook?
McKimson opens the door and steps inside. Professor, you're drunk.
Ugh. Yeah. You want to make something of it?
If it's any consolation, I don't like this any better than you do. Me, I think you're getting a raw deal, but that's just between us and off the record. Andy backs down, disarmed by the man's unexpected sympathy. You're in no condition to drive. Can I offer you a ride home? Andy thinks it over, this unexpected kindness making him feel ashamed of himself. He nods.
Yeah, that'd be swell. Thanks.
And crack! A small hole appears in the glass door behind Andy McKimson. He goes stiff, eyes wide with surprise. For a brief moment, Andy has no idea what's happening. And then he gets the shock of his life as McKimson drops from frame, revealing the thin man outside the glass doors. We know this guy anywhere. We saw him at the plutonium exchange, death in a Homburg hat, dressed all in black, rat-thin face with a long scar bisecting a milky dead eye. He's got a silenced pistol smoking in his hand, an old-fashioned broom-handled Mauser. The thin man fires again, putting another hole through the glass as Indy ducks and runs. The thin man runs to the doors, firing, the glass granulating and collapsing to the floor from the doorframe. He leaps in through the sudden entrance, aiming after Indy. He shoots. The bullet pings off the Brody statue as Indy runs past it. The thin man takes off in pursuit. Indy races through the darkened museum, instantly sober from adrenaline and panic. Silenced gunshots are whining past his head, punching holes through glass displays and obliterating precious artifacts. Andy cries out each time a museum piece explodes near him, horrified to see them destroyed. A bullet zings by him and shatters the leg of a table up ahead, upon which sits a priceless Han Dynasty vase. The vase topples and Indy dives to the floor, sliding on his stomach with arms outstretched. The vase falls perfectly into his grasp as he skids to a stop. He sets it delicately on the floor, and a bullet whizzes past his ear and blasts it to smithereens. Shit. He lunges to his feet and keeps running. The thin man reloads his pistol on the run. Andy darts around a corner up ahead. The thin man follows and finds the back exit doors are chained. There's only one other door in sight. He jerks it open, darts through it gun first. Interior museum clock tower, and glances up, hearing footsteps echoing to silence above. The thin man takes the stairs 3 at a time. Interior bellroom / top of tower, and he edges into view from below, shadows everywhere. Large open archways face out on 2 sides to the night air. 2 huge glass clock faces occupy the other 2 walls, big gears and cogs turning slowly. Light filters through the milky glass, throwing shades of Roman numerals and clock hands. Eerie, life-size bronze gods and goddesses are arrayed on a complex system of circular tracks. Zeus, Apollo, Neptune, Mars, Aphrodite, a dozen in all, poised to bang the bells with their implements. Neptune has a trident, Thor has a hammer. The thin man glides like a shadow, straining for any sign of his quarry. He thinks he hears a rustle in the darkness. He glances down to see the tips of Indy's shoes poking out from behind an upright beam. He edges closer as the clock gears turn, seconds away from midnight. Softly,
Come on, Pally, let's not drag this out.
the thin man darts around the beam to shoot, only Indy's not there. It's just his shoes. The clock strikes midnight and the clockwork gods jerk and rumble to life. The thin man gasps and spins around, whipping his aim at the sudden movement. The bronze figures are turning on their track and banging out the preamble melody on a series of bells, the room filling with sound and moving shadows. And we catch a glimpse of a god wiping through a spill of light as the figures come around. It's Indy, arm cocked. Wham! Indy lands an awesome punch. The thin man loses his gun and goes flying, skidding flat on his back, but springs forward, straight up off his back, and lands on his feet like a cat. Indy grabs a mop handle, brandishing it. Not missing a beat, the thin man twirls around, snatches a passing sword from Mars, the god of war, and cleaves Indy's weapon at midpoint on the floor through. Indy's suddenly just holding a short stick. The killer comes at Indy with a wicked flurry of sword moves. Indy barely avoids being gutted, ducking and dodging, stumbling onto the moving track and using the bronze figures for cover. The fight becomes a deadly dance between Indy, the thin man, and the moving clockwork figures, both men ducking mechanical limbs and implements or getting clobbered by them as the battle moves down the automated track. Exterior clock tower, and out through a door, winding around the outside of the clock tower 100 feet in the air. The thin man gets Indy in a stranglehold, trying to force him over the side. Grimacing, Indy manages to shove the thin man into the path of Thor's hammer as it swings. Whack. The assassin gets smacked in the head as the mechanical track carries them back inside. Interior clock tower. And the men are hurled to the floor as the rig lurches to a stop. And now the truly deafening part begins. The huge main bell starts tolling the hour as the thin man sees his gun lying on the floor where he dropped it earlier. He scrambles for it. Andy knows he can never get there in time. Thinking fast, he yanks the fertility goddess from his satchel. The thin man snatches up the gun and spins around to shoot. But the fertility goddess whizzes through the air like a fastball and nails him right between the eyes. Thunk. The impact sends him flying back, crashing through the huge clock face. It disintegrates spectacularly as the thin man explodes through it, plummeting in a rain of exterior roof, and he lands heavily on the roof below. The roof is peaked and clay tiled, steep angles descending on either side. The killer loses his gun. The Mauser pistol goes sliding/clattering down the steep roof tiles, vanishing from sight. The thin man pushes to his feet, balancing on the peak as Indy drops onto the roof behind him. The killer whips around, but Indy nails him with a mighty punch that bloodies his nose. Thin man snarls and lands a karate kick in Indy's stomach that doubles him over. Indy backpedals, almost losing his balance as his enemy presses the attack with a series of scary martial arts moves. The guy's a friggin' karate expert. To make things worse, it's all happening with both men trying like crazy to keep their balance on the peak of the roof. Indy gets driven to his knees. The killer lunges, but Indy grabs the guy and rolls back, using the momentum to vault the thin man over his head. The killer flips through the air, slams hard onto the sloping tile, and starts to slide down, but he grabs Indy's satchel strap and pulls him over too. The two men go sliding down the roof like an out-of-control ride down a water slide. The thin man dragging Indy following headfirst on his stomach, going airborne as they hit a gable and sail over it like skiers hitting a ramp, slamming back down, and suddenly there's the thin man's arm lying on the tiles, and he grabs it as they sail past, and holy crap, here comes the edge of the roof. And the thin man sails off into space, but Indy jams to an abrupt stop at the roof's edge, holding on to the killer. The thin man finds himself pendulating over a horrible drop to the pavement below, Indy clutching him by one hand. The killer aims his gun up at Indy. A look passes between them.
Shooting me right now would be a really bad idea.
The thin man hates to admit it, but Indy's right. He drops the Mauser to free up his hand, then reaches up and grabs hold of Indy's wrist, trying to hold on. He's slipping.
Why are you trying to kill me?
You're a loose end. People I work for don't like loose ends. My hands are sweaty. Grab my sleeve.
Indy shifts his grip to the man's coat sleeve, grabbing it with both hands. The killer's fingers are clawing at the edge of the roof tile, trying to get a grip.
Come on, Pally, pull me up.
Give me a reason.
Suddenly, the thin man glances to the side. The seam of his coat is giving way at the shoulder, slowly.
Pull me up. I'll tell you, I'll spill everything. I'll write out the Ruski, that Russies. I'll clear you. I swear I will. Just pull me up for the love of Mike. Pull me up.
Indy's trying, straining with all of his might. He's pulling the thin man slowly but surely, higher and higher. The killer's face rises up into view. He's got his hand on the tiles now, desperately getting some traction, moments away from defeating gravity and being pulled to safety, and his coat sleeve tears off. There's a horrible look of realization in his eyes, a gasp of startled terror as he falls back and vanishes from view. The thin man free falls away from cameras, screaming, arms and legs windmilling, clay tiles plummeting in his wake. On the roof, and Indy hears a distant thump. He crawls to the edge and peers over, an empty coat sleeve flapping in his hand. Time cut. Exterior museum, night. Indy steps up to the thin man's body. He goes to his knees, searching the man's pockets. All he finds is a tiny key, the kind that goes to a public locker. The locker number is stamped on the bottom along with the words Grand Central. Wipe 2, interior Indy's bedroom, night. An old battered suitcase hits the bed. It's covered with countless stickers from exotic locales. Cairo, Sumatra, Tibet, Lisbon, Prague, Pismo Beach. The latches are thrown and the lids swung open. Inside, sprinkled with mothballs, are a familiar leather jacket, crumpled fedora, bullwhip, and gun. The leather satchel is tossed in, joining its companions. Angle up to Indy, his expression intense. He spins to his dresser and yanks the drawers completely out, dumping their contents onto the suitcase. Suddenly, the lights come on. Indy turns, sees his father in the doorway. Henry Sr. is in his robe, blinking slowly.
What time is it?
Late. Go back to bed.
Indy keeps tossing stuff into his suitcase like a madman. His father moves into the room, eyeing him.
Fine. Run away.
Dad, don't start.
Run away like you've always run away. That's what you're good at, isn't it? Lord knows you've had plenty of practice.
Dad, not now.
And you've been drinking. Look at you. You're a mess. Small wonder no self-respecting woman will have anything to do with you.
Look, save the grandchildren's speech, okay? Because I'm really pressed for time.
Indiana, stop. These charges of treason outrage me to the marrow of my bones. They're a disgrace for everything we hold dear. You must stay and fight, son. You mustn't run away.
No? Watch me.
Beat. Henry stuns Indy with a hard slap.
It appears there's a reason you're named after the dog.
Indy raises his hand to his face, tears stinging his eyes.
A man tried to kill me tonight. An assassin sent by the Russians.
Dear God. Well, we must alert the authorities. You need protection. This surely proves your innocence.
He killed an FBI agent, the one tailing me. They're going to think I did it. You know what that puts me? In the electric chair.
Suddenly, flashing red lights play across the curtains. We hear tires screech to a stop, car doors slam, police radios squawk. Events are spiraling out of control fast. Henry's torn, lost, reeling with guilt for the slap. He throws his arms around Indy in a desperate fatherly embrace.
Junior, forgive me.
Indy melts in his father's arms for a moment.
But I can't let you run. I won't. You'll only prove them right.
Then he recoils, angrily pulling free and shoving his father off his feet into a chair. He grabs his suitcase off the bed. Interior hallway, night. There's pounding at the front door, cop shadows on the pebbled glass. Indy bursts from the bedroom, chased a moment later by his father. They lock eyes for a moment, then cut in two different directions. Henry going for the front door, Indy coming towards us with his suitcase.
Coming, hold on.
Andy turns the corner and pauses tight to camera, listening. Henry opens the door into a glare of flashlights in the background.
What's the meaning of this? Do you know what time it is?
Sir, we're looking for your son.
He hasn't been here all night. Why? What's happened?
Andy sighs with relief and darts from frame. Exterior Indy's house, and crouches in the bushes as cops with flashlights run by. More flashing red lights are arriving, sweeping the neighborhood. Andy makes a break, vaults the back fence, and runs off into the night as we wipe to exterior Manhattan, aerial establishing shot day. The gleaming spires of both the Chrysler and Empire State Buildings catch the morning sun. A Ford tri-motor passenger plane thunders into frame, heading for the skyline. Wipe to interior Grand Central Station day. Andy makes his way among throngs of commuters, suitcase in hand. He comes to the public lockers, checking the key against the locker numbers. He finds the one he's looking for, makes damn sure he isn't being watched, inserts the key. Angle from inside the locker, and swings the door open. Andy's stunned at what he finds inside. It's a bowling ball bag with tartan sides, the same one Yuri handed off to the Thin Man at the military base. Lying next to it is a hotel room key with a plastic tag. Andy reaches in and grabs them. Exterior busy Manhattan Street. And his hand comes up into frame with the hotel key. The tag reads Hotel Excelsior. Tilts up to the Hotel Excelsior across the street. Andy steps off the curb, dodging traffic. Angle from inside parked car. And as Andy reaches the other side, angle shifts to the foreground to a gangster named Reggie Nalder, slouched behind the wheel of his car with a racing form in his hand, chewing on a toothpick. He watches with keen interest as Andy enters the hotel. Interior Hotel Excelsior. Andy comes up the hallway, finds the room number. He sets his suitcase and the bowling ball bag down, pulls his trusty old scuffed revolver from under his coat, inserts the key. Interior hotel room. Bursts in, ready for anything. The place is a flea pit, and it's empty. He does a quick search just to make sure, grabs the bags in from the hallway, slams the door. He slots the security chain for good measure. He brings the bowling ball bag to a table, regards it with deep wonder and suspicion. What the hell could be inside? He pulls up a chair, gets himself ready for the big moment. He grabs a paperclip, straightens it, picks the lock. The bag is stuffed with crumpled newspaper. He reaches in, feeling around, growing more puzzled as his fingers find something he can't identify. He pulls it out, revealing a crystal skull. Perfectly formed, life-size, smooth and glass, kicking light like a giant diamond orb. At first glance, it would appear to be the world's most exotic art object. Andy recognizes it instantly for what it is, a thrill going through him. From his expression, it's a rare object indeed. Softly.
Skull of Destiny. My God. What on earth do the Russians want with you?
He gazes into its eyes in wonder, deeply drawn by it, getting lost in its depths. Reflected light is kicking into his eyes, the effect proving hypnotic. And suddenly the daylight in the room seems to grow dimmer as the traffic noise fades away, and now the skull seems to be glowing from within, getting brighter as all sound vanishes except for an eerie harmonic hum, building from the netherworld, pulling Indy into an ever greater trance, ensnaring him in the skull's seductive curves and facets, and the room is gone now, except for Indy and the skull blazing like a beacon in his hands, and what before was merely reflected light from the skull's surface now resolved into purposeful twin beams, emanating from the skull's empty eye sockets and Indy's eyes, his gaze helplessly locked now with the skull's. And we begin to hear terrifying whispers, guttural, inhuman voices speaking in strange tongues, and bam, 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 somebody's pounding at the door. Indy snaps out of it, everything back to normal. The daylight, the cars honking outside, the shabby room. He recoils from the skull, reeling from his experience, his face drenched with sweat. What the hell just happened? He sets it on the table, grabs his revolver, goes to the door.
Who is it?
Mother of Creole, open up!
Indy cracks the door open with the chain still on. Reggie Nolder, the gangster from the car, peers in at him.
You gonna let me in, or do I stand here drawing a crowd?
Indy, nonplussed, unchains the door. Reggie saunters in and sees the gun.
Nix, buddy, nix. I'm the guy you want. You're 3 days overdue. That's a long time. I gotta cool my heels. Where the hell you been?
Indy realizes this guy has assumed he's somebody else.
Had an errand. What's it to you?
Nothing. Now that you mention it, the less I know, the better. Nice paperweight. I'm supposed to tell you to go to the Hotel El Presidente and wait for your contact. Pleasure doing business.
Reggie walks out. Indy is left holding the envelope. He opens the flap, pulls out a passport, travel money, and plane tickets. He looks closer and sees, close up on ticket, that his destination is Peru. Resolve 2, travel montage. A McDonnell Douglas Constellation, the most modern propeller-driven airliner of its day, with a unique triple rudder tail, thunders away from Manhattan, as Indy is served a drink by a pretty stewardess, a bowling ball bag sitting between his feet as carry-on. And a series of dissolves takes place against a moving map with an animated red line taking us farther and farther south, across the Gulf and down the Yucatan to South America. While Indy travels on a series of planes, each one less modern than the last, each stewardess less attractive than the one before, until he's riding a scary old DC-3 with rags stuffed in the windows, and now stewardess and all, the aisle is packed with crates of live goats instead. And the red line reaches Lima, where it branches off into a smaller line heading up into the mountains, where we find Indy jostling around in the most god-awful rickety bus ever, winding up steep and treacherous mountain roads. Montage ends and the map vanishes as we find ourselves in exterior Madre de Dios, Peru, day. It's a backwater, just large enough to be called a city. Its Boulevard Grande, which lies before us, is unpaved and rutted with mud. Welcome to the ends of the earth. The bus pulls in. Indy gets off with the other passengers. The street is bustling with workers from the fields, hauling bundles of cane, wandering livestock, kids running and yelling, stray dogs burning trash. Across the street is the Hotel El Presidente, a big rundown colonial mess. Indy crosses the street and enters as we cut to exterior alley, Manhattan, night. Reggie Nolder, his nose bloodied, comes sailing into frame and slams up against the alley wall.
It ain't my fault. I swear.
He cowers as a shadow falls over him. Hands reach in, grab him by the collar. Camera comes around tight to reveal.
You gave my tickets and passport. How was it not your fault?
Our mutual friend, the thin man with the scar and the dead eye, he tells me Hotel Excelsior. Wait for a guy with a plaid bowling ball bag to check in. Give him the envelope. How am I supposed to know it ought to be you? I just do what I'm told.
And what did this man look like?
Cut to tight on Indy as he steps into frame, checking himself in a mirror as he shrugs into the jacket of his tropical linen suit. Exotic Latin jazz drifts into the open balcony doors. Interior hotel room, Peru, night. As he grabs his revolver, jams it in the waistband of his trousers. The suit's seen better days, but it's not too bad. A little rumpled, maybe. Most importantly for his purposes, his suit jacket hides the gun. He buttons the jacket. Interior lobby and descends the stairs to the front desk. The concierge has a pencil-thin mustache and patent leather hair.
Somebody asked for me. I'll be in the bar.
The concierge nods. Camera follows Indy into interior hotel bar / nightclub. Food and drinks are being served. A Latin jazz combo fronted by a female vocalist performs on a tiny stage, the source of the music we heard up in Indy's room. Indy crosses the room towards the bar, checking out the occupants. They, in turn, check him out. Never have we seen a more nefarious bunch. It looks like we raided the supporting cast of a Michael Curtiz movie. A fat man wearing a fez and smoking a hookah nods to Indy as he goes by. An unshaven Peruvian with an eye patch and a macaw on his shoulder throws him a suspicious glance. Some Eastern Europeans playing cards give him a glowering once-over. Any of these people could be Indy's contact. From appearances, they're all spies. Indy sits at the bar under a slow-turning ceiling fan, his back to the room. The bartender appears.
Martini, por favor.
As the drink is made, Indy tosses a subtle glance or two, trying to guess which one of these rogues will approach him. While behind him, far in the background, a woman enters the lobby. We're too far away to see her face, and in any event, she's obscured by a stylish wide-brimmed hat that matches her white tailored skirts. Whoever she is, she's got a sensational figure. She steps to the front desk, speaking to the front desk, and the concierge responds with a nod, pointing.
The gentleman you seek is at the bar.
She nods her thanks. Camera follows her into the bar/nightclub and across the room. We still don't see her face, but she's certainly drawing her share of stares. She's too classy for the joint and gives off the air of a femme fatale. The band should be playing something hot and smoky during this walk. She comes up behind Indy as the bartender sets down his martini. She makes her presence known by plucking an olive with a white-gloved hand and dropping it in Indy's drink. Indy turns, looking up at her, a frozen beat, his expression going slack. For a moment, his brain refuses to accept what he's seeing. It's literally the last person you ever expect. Reverse angle reveals Marion Ravenwood. She looks fantastic, not to mention dumbstruck at the sight of Indy. Her smile fades, and she hauls off and punches him in the mouth. Indy flies off his stool and lands on his ass.
Oh,
What the hell are you doing here?
the hell are you hitting me for?
I told you if I ever saw your face again, I'd pop you one.
Indy grabs the tool, hauling himself off the floor.
That was 12 years ago. You have a long memory, lady.
Yeah, too long. I still remember you, don't I?
Indy rises to his feet, swaying a bit. She gets ready to punch him again, but he lifts his hand to ward her off.
Hey, you said you'd pop me one, not two. A lady always keeps a promise.
You didn't answer my question.
I'm meeting somebody. It could be dangerous. I'd love to stand here and reminisce, but you have to leave.
Fine. Just give me my crystal skull and I'll wait outside.
What, you? I'm meeting you?
You're still not too bright, are you, Jones? Some things never change.
She grabs his martini off the bar, downs in one gulp.
Of all the diggers in the world, they had to send you. Unbelievable.
She grabs the gin bottle off the bar and stalks out. Indy rubs his jaw, sees the bartender staring at him.
On my room.
Exterior Hotel El President night. Marion exits, swigging back gin and scattering chickens. Indy runs out a moment later, dogging her up.
What are you mad at me for?
How much time you got?
Hey, you're the one who walked out on me. Remember, that was your choice.
Oh, you left me no choice. You know what? Forget it. Just give me the skull.
Marion, listen, do you even know what you've gotten into? Do you know what danger you're in?
Of course there's danger. Don't patronize me. I've been on plenty of expeditions. I know the risks. They did mention the expedition, right? You're supposed to be my foreman. Ring a bell?
Well, sure, but they never said where.
Never mind where. This ain't gonna work out. So consider yourself off the hook, okay? Just give me what I came for and we'll call it a night for the rest of our lives.
Indy thinks about this, a hint of a smile forming. He grabs the bottle of gin from her hand.
Marion Ravenwood. I always knew someday you'd come crawling back through that door. Only this time, I've got something you need.
And he saunters back to the hotel. Marion is left seething.
Jones.
Interior Indy's hotel room night. 2 glasses hit the table before us. A gin bottle descends pouring. Marion enters in the background, tossing her hat on a chair.
No more games. Where is it?
Maybe here. Maybe not.
Angle widens as we follow Marion around the room, checking the place. Closets, under the bed, linen cabinets. Indy raises the 2 drinks, waiting, watching her, enjoying her growing frustration. She finally gives up, crosses back to him, and he hands her the drink. They circle each other warily.
The expedition to where?
This is extortion.
Oh, absolutely.
Ciudad de Dioses. That's right, we're going after the lost city of the gods.
Los dioses. The city's not lost. It never existed. It's a myth, a fable.
Oh, yeah? Where do you think that skull came from, smart guy?
Indy eyes her dubiously as she pours another drink.
Sounds like hooey to me.
Oh, it's not. There was a failed expedition about 3 years ago.
The Oxley expedition?
It's the one. Figured you heard of it. Oxley was a friend of your father's, wasn't he?
Yeah. Guy was like an uncle to me. Broke my old man's heart when they disappear without a trace.
Not entirely without a trace. A year after they vanished, the lone survivor staggered out of the jungle into some remote village. How he survived that long in the world is anybody's guess, but I hear the poor guy's mind was gone. Word is he wound up in an insane asylum.
A survivor, are you sure?
It wasn't Oxley, if that's what you're thinking. Just some bear. Look, point is, he was carrying the skull when they found him. It's been changing hands ever since. It wasn't easy to track down. Or cheap. Cost us a small fortune.
Who's us? Who's involved in this cockeyed mess?
Baron Peter Velasco, famous archaeologist. I'm sure you've heard of him.
Velasco, the Hungarian. Yeah, I've heard of him. He's the dilettante who writes bestsellers. Let me tell you something. For centuries, people have gone after Los Dioses and died trying. It's because it ain't real. It's a fairy tale. If this Velasco's going for it, he's a lunatic. He's dangerous. Do not trust him. In fact, stay as far away from him as possible.
That'll be a little hard to do.
She raises her left hand, revealing her wedding ring.
Since he's my husband.
This hits Indy hard. He turns away, shaking his head in wonder.
Can't believe it. After all that talk about your father dragging you all over the world and all that talk about... After all that belly aching, you went and married an archaeologist?
He's reliable. He's got class. I became an excellent judge of character, thanks to you.
Yeah, and modest.
You gonna give me the skull?
Sure. As soon as we're underway, partner.
Partner? Hell, I'm in charge of this expedition, Jones. That means you work for me. The sooner you get that through your thick head, the better off we are. 10 a.m. Be ready to leave. You and the skull.
She exits. Andy stands for a long moment with the drink in his hand and looks up. On the ceiling above his head is a light fixture, a bright glowing frosty glass below with abstract etched designs. Camera rises, closing in. Vaguely glimpsed through the frosty glass, hidden among the designs, the face of the crystal skull of Destiny peers down at us. Cut to exterior presidential palace day. A big afternoon event is getting underway with scores of arriving guests in formal wear strolling up the pavilion towards the palace. A car enters frame. Interior car, driven by Ronaldo. Sitting in back are Indy and Miriam. Andy's in his rumpled suit, balancing several books and a map on his knees. He looks up, sees all the tuxes and gowns.
We have to do this?
Only if we want our expedition papers signed. President Escalante is short at this particular point, senor. Anyone searching for antiquities in Peru must have his personal authorization. Believe me, you don't want to run into a foul of El Presidente or his army.
Interior palace ballroom. Indy and Marion are led in by a personal secretary. A live orchestra is playing. Hundreds of guests are chatting, dancing, grazing opulent food. Indy and Marion are escorted to President Escalante, El Presidente, a man in military uniform with an ostentatious array of ribbons and medals on his chest. He's regaling some guests when he spots Marion.
Senora Velasco, I am enchanted once again.
Ah, President Escalante. This is Indiana Jones, my expedition foreman.
A rough and tumble caballero with a name like a cowboy.
He gestures to an American he's been chatting with. Osgood Turner looks every inch the career bureaucrat that he is.
May I introduce your fellow American? He is here representing the interests of your government.
Osgood Turner, Section Chief, State Department. Your name again?
Jones. Indiana Jones.
Turner keeps smiling, but we can see the name rings a bell. Pleasure to meet you both.
Come, you are my honored guests this day. We must have pictures. Let us commemorate the occasion.
As they walk away, Indy throws an uncomfortable glance over his shoulder and sees Turner staring at him. Escalante leads them to a waiting photographer who has a bellows camera on a tripod, a lighting setup, and a seamless backdrop.
Please, Mr. President, you first.
Oh, no, these pictures are not of me. They're of my guests for my wall.
He motions to countless framed photos of people on the wall.
All the people who have gone after the city of the gods and never returned. For posterity.
Lovely tradition. Lovely.
Indy and Marion are herded before the lens, looking stiff and uncomfortable together. Andy's distracted, scanning the photos on the wall. He spots a certain photo of a distinguished older man and directs her attention to it, muttering,
That one there. That's Oxley.
In the unlikely event that you survive, you will, of course, receive copies. 8x10s, wallet size, big smile.
The photographer presses the shutter cable and flash. The screen whites out. Interior ballroom, day, time cut. And the flash dies away as a chorus line of female dancers come trooping out along the runway, launching into a Broadway-style tap routine as the audience applauds. Angle drifts past the orchestra to find Indy and Marion seated at a banquet table. Andy poring over his books and map.
I'm remembering this right. Look, in the early 16th century, a pair of Jesuits attached to Pizarro's expedition found what they claimed was Los Dioses, the lost city of the gods in the Valley of Dreams. Look, they said it was a place where wishes became real. Of course, they were insane by the time they stumbled out of the jungle. All they had in their story was all they had to back up their story was the gold they were carrying and a crystal skull. Skulls on private display in the Vatican Museum.
There's more than one. 12 that I know of.
Yeah, right. Like the Mitchell Hedges skull, the one in the British museums and in private collections. Now, your skull. Lucky 13. How'd you get your hands on it?
Andy's tone is casual, but it's a weighted question. He knows Russian spies are involved, but wants to see if Marion has any idea. She just shrugs.
We went through antiquities broker in Marrakech. Same guy who hired you.
Osgood Turner hovers in an alcove, speaking urgently on a phone. Yes, I'm looking at him right now. Notify Washington that Jones has surfaced in Peru. Resume Indy and Marion as the dancers finish their routine and troop off the runway to thunderous applause. Escalante rises from his seat.
And now, my friends, the afternoon's main entertainment.
A fresh line of people are trooped out, all men. They turn to face the audience like a row of beauty pageant contestants. As Marion reaches across Indy to his map of Peru. Unnoticed by them, the line of men on stage are having nooses lowered around their necks as the orchestra plays jauntily on.
Peter's got the team assembled waiting for us. Right there. As soon as we get our papers signed, I've got a plane waiting.
Plane. Good. Legend has it the Jesuits found the lost city by following the lines of the earth left by the gods as a map. Professor Oxley once told my father that he thought the lines in the earth meant the Nazca lines.
The orchestra tapers off as a drum roll begins. Andy points on the map, draws his finger along their proposed route.
But that's along our route. I say we fly over them. If Oxley was right, they could point the way.
Thought you didn't believe in the lost city stuff.
I don't. That doesn't mean I'm always right.
They glance up just as the drum roll ends and thunk. The runway drops out from under the feet of the men as they are hung. Applause from the audience. Indy and Marion just sit there with their jaws open, aghast as...
So much for our communist rebels. Hey, come, enjoy.
The orchestra strikes up again. Couples take to the dance floor. Escalante spots Marion, smiles and waves. He approaches their table, pulling a pen from his pocket.
Nice friends you got.
New angle, and now we're watching from across the room as Escalante bends to show Marion's papers. Angle shifts to a figure in the foreground and watching. He turns toward us. His name is Angel, a Peruvian rebel dressed as a busboy. He exits frame as Escalante signs the document, folds it, offers it to Marion. But when she tries to take it, he doesn't immediately let go. First,
remember, Senora, all antiquities found in Peru belong to me. You are well advised to keep that in mind.
there is a threat implicit in his smile. He releases his grip, letting her have the document as we cut to exterior airfield day. A hand reaches up, spins a wooden propeller. The engine roars to life. The man turns, revealing Indiana Jones as we know and love him. Leather jacket, fedora, bullwhip. He circles the plane. It's a big, ungainly biplane with two open cockpits, as graceful as a buffalo. Ronaldo is in the forward cockpit, revving the engine. Marion is in the rear cockpit. Indy clambers up, squeezes in behind her. The space accommodates two, but it's snug.
Watch those mitts.
Don't flatter yourself.
He signals Ronaldo. The biplane bounces down the dirt runway, scattering sheep as it lurches into the air, and we dissolve to exterior aerial montage day. A series of shots takes us over the fabled Nazca lines, the huge, mysterious geoglyphs carved into the earth of the desolate Nazca plains. Each pictograph is several kilometers long and all unique. The killer whale, the baby condor, the hummingbird, the astronaut, the god, humanoid in form, the spider, the star, the lizard, and so on. And he's leaning out with a small Leica, snapping pictures. Exterior biplane. And as they come towards camera, a pursuing biplane descends in the frame behind them. Indy is oblivious for a moment, focusing the Leica, then he glances back, seeing the enemy plane has dual cockpits. Push in to reveal Yuri piloting it. Behind him in the rear cockpit is Angel, a Peruvian rebel busboy, manning a swivel machine gun mounted between the cockpits. Indy is stunned and horrified to see Yuri on its tail.
Behind us.
Ronaldo glances back in panic as bullets shred the tail. He throws the stick hard left, banking away. Behind them, Yuri's plane is smaller and more nimble. His zips and swerves, staying on our hero's tail, machine guns blazing.
Why are they shooting at us?
He pulls out our expedition papers and waves them wildly at the pursuing plane, elbowing Indy in the face.
We have permission!
Indy grabs the top of Marion's head and shoves her down out of sight, trying to get her out of the line of fire. He pulls his revolver, turns and starts firing. The enemy plane swerves to avoid his shots. Massive green mountains loom in on either side as the terrain goes from desert to jungle. Ronaldo veers out over an endless vista of rainforest with the enemy plane hot on his heels. Marion keeps trying to rise, but Indy keeps shoving her back down. He shakes the spent cartridges from his revolver, accidentally sending one down the back of her neck.
Ow! Damn it, that's hot!
And he frantically reloads, a painfully slow process of inserting each bullet individually. Marion watches with growing amazement and irritation.
I know what I'm buying you for Christmas. A Tommy gun.
He slaps the cylinder shut and twists around, trying to draw a bead on the pursuing plane, finally giving Marion a chance to pop back up. He's just in time to witness machine gun bullets chew holes up the length of the lower wing. Worse yet, the outermost wooden struts connecting upper and lower wings get chopped in half, severing them. The upper wing is no longer anchored. The outer half is flexing up, creaking, threatening to give way entirely.
Indy, the wing's gonna tear off.
Cover me. Keep these bastards off our tail.
Indy slaps the gun into Marion's hand along with bullets. He heaves himself from his seat, balancing crazily on the edge of the cockpit, leans forward, grips the upper wing, and swings himself onto the bottom wing, grabbing the upright struts to keep from being swept off. He looks back and sees the enemy plane moving in for the kill. But Marion levels the revolver over the back of the cockpit and lets him have it. Blam, blam, blam. Yuri's plane takes a few bullet hits. Yuri veers off. Marion lets out a laugh of triumph, cracks the cylinder and starts to reload. As Indy wing walks between the struts, wind tearing at his clothes. He hears a horrible loud crunch ahead. He looks up and sees the upper wing now buckling severely up, about to shear off. Indy unspools his bulwark and cracks it forward, twining the end of it around the fractured upper strut. He heaves down the wing and steps close, desperately wrapping the upper and lower struts with the whip, threading them together. Marion finishes reloading as Yuri's plane reappears with Angel firing the machine gun. Marion ducks the gunfire but drops the pistol. Luckily, it falls into the cockpit. Unluckily, the cockpit is really tight and she has to go down after. Yuri's plane. Angel's ammo runs dry. He hurries to reload, bringing up a new box and struggling to pop the lid while Indy finishes his repair, turns back and sees Marion gone. He looks in horror at the pursuit plane, totally exposed. Inside the fuselage / Marion's cockpit, while Marion gropes for the revolver on the floor of the fuselage, grimacing and contorting around the control stick and rudder pins. A duplicate of Ronaldo's in the forward cockpit, her fingers straining for the gun. Yuri's plane.
Shoot him. Why don't you shoot?
I must reload. The ammo box is jammed.
Thinking fast, Yuri guns the throttle and surges forward. Indy sees him coming, helpless to do anything.
Marion, get up here now.
Inside the fuselage / Marion's cockpit, her fingers are moments away from snagging the gun. The planes. Yuri maneuvers in, using his propeller to buzzsaw the tail of our hero's plane to tatters. Ronaldo's reaction is to panic and throw the biplane into a steep dive. This has two results. One, Indy loses his balance, falls flat on the wing, and slides clean off and manages to grab a vertical wing strut. The gun slides away from Marion's fingers, skidding down the floor of the fuselage towards Ronaldo's feet.
Damn it, Ronaldo!
Ronaldo glances back, hearing,
Pull up! Do you hear me? Pull up!
Ronaldo jerks back the control stick as hard as he can, inside the fuselage / Marion's cockpit, and the duplicate stick jerks back as well, whacking Marion right between the eyes. It knocks her out cold. Indy is hanging on the wing strut by his fingertips, his body trailing in the slipstream. He looks back as Yuri maneuvers in again, closer and closer, propeller cutting the air like the world's biggest meat slicer. Indy gulps. It is the world's biggest meat slicer, and he's the meat. Ronaldo starts zigging and zagging. Yuri zigs and zags along right behind them, sticking close, propeller whipping from side to side and missing Indy's legs by inches on every pass. Indy's getting whipped around in the slipstream like a human rag, helpless. He can't hold on much longer. Besides the strut, he's clutching in, starting to crack under his fingers. He glances back at the enemy plane, getting an idea of one of sheer desperation. He knows his timing must be perfect or he'll die, and he waits for the right moment when Ronaldo zigs and Yuri zags, and that's when Indy lets go. Yuri's plane, and he sails past the propellers, slamming painfully into the wing struts of the enemy plane. He grabs on for dear life, letting his momentum and the rushing wind spin him around towards the pilot's cockpit, where he lands an awesome punch to Yuri's face. Yuri is knocked senseless for a moment, head snapping back as the plane starts to drift. Indy looks to an astonished Angel, who's finally gotten the ammo box open and is just finishing reloading. Angel racks the feet bolt and swings the machine gun around to shoot, but Indy's already scrambling over Yuri to the rear cockpit. Wham! Indy lands another solid punch, this one rocking Angel's head around. The machine gun swings wildly and fires. Hero plane, killing Ronaldo as the bullets shred our hero plane. Ronaldo slumps, head dropping down, just as Marion's head pops up in the cockpit behind him. She's coming to, looking around. She glances over and sees Indy on the other plane, trading punches with Angel. She blinks in confusion. How the hell did he get over there? And then it dawns on her. She looks forward, heart in her throat. She's alone with a dead pilot. Can it get any worse? Well, yes, it can. Ronaldo slumps forward on the control stick, sending the plane into a dive. It drops from view as...
Indy!
Yuri's plane. Yuri gathers his wits and glances back, sees Indy and Angel swapping punches. Yuri, furious, decides there's one simple way to solve this problem. He snap rolls the plane upside down, flying inverted. Both combatants fall. Angel plummets away screaming, but Indy manages to grab the machine gun mount and hold on. Yuri looks back and sees Indy dangling there. Shit.
What's so special about the skull, Yuri? Why do you want it so bad?
Give it to me and maybe I'll let you live.
For old time's sake? Hell with you.
Pissed, Yuri snap rolls the plane upright again, causing Indy to plop into the rear cockpit. Indy sits up. Yuri pulls a pistol, turns around to shoot him, and this time it's Indy who grabs the stick and snap rolls the plane upside down. Yuri falls out screaming. The last we see of him, he's free falling towards the jungle below. Indy snap rolls the plane right side up again with a no big deal look on his face. Apparently, he's become an expert pilot since Temple of Doom. Indy looks around, sees Marion's plane way the hell down there. He rolls his plane into a steep dive to catch up with him. Marion's plane is pretty much shot to pieces by now, flying via miracles, sputtering and trailing smoke. Worse yet, we're still in a steady dive towards the jungle below. Marion's tugging on her stick, trying to pull it back, but the weight of Ronaldo's body on his stick is preventing. Indy's plane zooms in from above, matching her dive as he shouts at the top of his lungs.
Pull up! Pull up!
God, what if there weren't a dead guy on the stick?
Well, try harder!
He points frantically at the jungle below. There's a lot of green rushing up to meet us. Marion braces her feet on the instrument panel, straining with all of her might. The stick begins to move. Ronaldo's body flops back as the stick rises, and her plane levels out just above the trees, heading straight for a cliff.
Hard left! Hard left!
Marion throws the stick hard left, making an extreme 180-degree turn with Indy on her tail. Both planes level out in the direction they came, sailing along some 10 or 20 feet above the jungle canopy. It's scary and spectacular, a roller coaster ride without the rails.
Now what?
Can you fly?
Does one lesson count?
Okay, plan B. Grab the skull, I'll get my wing to your cockpit, you wing walk over to me and we fly away.
Do you call that a plan?
You got a better one?
Why don't you come to me?
Well, let's see. Could it be because your plane is shot to pieces and will fall apart at any moment? No? Okay. How about the fact that I can't fly and wing walk at the same time? Am I getting warmer? Look, either do it or die arguing.
He points. She looks and sees a ridge of sheer granite rising out of the jungle dead ahead. She hastily reaches behind the seat to retrieve the skull. Andy starts easing the plane in, but his attention suddenly snaps ahead as he sees Yuri is dropping towards the trees by parachute with a burp gun in his hands. Yuri opens fire, tracking the planes as they go ripping by him, emptying the clip into Andy's engine. Then he drops into the trees, gone. Beep. Andy leans to one side and peers ahead at the engine, which seems to be doing fine, until the entire cowling abruptly bursts into flames. Andy looks over to Marion.
Never mind, I'll come to you.
Marion nods frantically. The granite ridge is looming. Nursing the last few seconds of life from his flaming engine, Indy drops altitude, his wheels now kissing the treetops, and he veers under Marion. With mere moments to spare, he reaches up and grabs hold of her landing gear as his plane drops out from under him, leaving him dangling. The abandoned plane impacts nose first into the trees below his feet, cartwheeling through a spectacular, fiery disintegration.
Pull up! Pull up!
Marion heaves back on the stick with all she's got, fighting for every inch of altitude. For a moment, it doesn't look like they're going to make it, but they do, clearing the ridge by mere feet. Unfortunately, the ridge proves to be a jungle plateau, where Marion's plane is suddenly chewing through the treetops like a hedge trimmer with wings. Indy is holding on desperately to the landing gear, getting swept relentlessly through the branches. Swarms of monkeys are shrieking and jumping out of the way. Thump! Indy looks down and finds a shrieking monkey clinging in terror to his chest and screaming in his face. Indy screams back, equally startled. The monkey jumps for it, vanishing back into the trees as the plateau suddenly drops away and the plane soars out over 1,000-foot drop with Indy still holding on. Marion wrestles the stick, looking frantically over the sides.
Indy! Indy!
A trembling hand appears at the edge of the forward cockpit, followed by a second hand. Indy's face rises up, looking like he's been dragged down 10 miles of bad road. Marion lights up with a cocky grin, exceedingly proud of herself.
Ha! Not bad flying for one lesson, huh, Jones?
Monkey pooped on my chest.
She doesn't understand what that means, and he's too tired to explain. He hauls himself painfully over the side into Ronaldo's cockpit, tosses a glance back over his shoulder.
I'll take it from here.
And the engine dies the instant he takes the stick. The huge wooden propeller stops.
Perfect.
And they drop from frame like a brick. Various angles. Indy wrestles the plane into dead glide, dropping fast, desperately looking for a place to set down. He dead sticks it towards a clearing, trying to line up for a landing.
Hang on!
The landing gear tears off as they clip a tree and deli skid in. The wings are ripped off by passing tree trunks. Then the plane finally comes to a stop. All things considered, it's a pretty damn good landing. Andy looks stunned that he pulled it off. He tosses a cocky smile over his shoulder at Marion, but she points. He turns forward to see flames erupting from the engine. A mad scramble. He leaps from his cockpit.
Quick, let's go!
Tosses him a knapsack and jumps down. They race away from the plane and boom, the plane explodes, sending a fireball into the sky and knocking them both flat on their faces. Marion pries her nose off the ground, looks back at the plane. It's an inferno.
Huh. Suppose we can walk from here.
That might work. The compass and map weren't in the plane.
Andy rolls painfully onto his back, barely able to move. He sees his whip lying within reach in a tangle of wing wreckage. He snags it with his fingers, pulls it towards him, groaning with each little movement.
Oh,
Matter Jones, mileage finally catching up with you.
the mileage, sweetheart, it's the years.
This gets a faint trace of a smile from her. In spite of everything, there's still a tiny spark here, but her smile vanishes as she gets furious.
Who the hell were those guys and why were they shooting at us?
You're really telling me you don't know anything about these Russian spies?
Russian spies? Are you insane? Damn it, Indy! What have you gotten me into?
Me? Why is it always me? Hey, it's your skull there after. You want to explain that?
The conversation escalates into a shouting match as...
Oh, please, don't shift blame. Things were fine until you showed up.
Yeah, I didn't hear you complaining when I saved your life 5 times in 10 minutes.
Oh, yeah, well, my life wouldn't need saving if it wasn't for you. Don't take credit for putting me out of the fire you started.
Hey, Baroness, your Highness, whatever the hell you are, yelling at me doesn't get us out of this jungle alive. You want to be constructive? Help me figure out where we are so we can...
Suddenly they hear a twig snap. They fall silent, turning slowly. Behind them are revealed a line of fierce native warriors. They're war-painted Javitas, wearing bits of bone, feathers, loincloths. Camera pans them. Every single warrior stands poised with blowguns, arrows, or spears. We in frame as Dr. Felix von Braun unexpectedly steps from amongst them into close-up. Thin, unshaven, sinister, wearing wireframe specs. He removes his hat, revealing a bristly gray crew cut.
Guten Tag.
Off Indy's and Marion's astonished looks, we cut to exterior jungle day. An empty parachute hangs from the branches of a tree. Tilt down to reveal Yuri on the ground below, sorting items into a knapsack. He rises, grabs his burp gun, starts walking, and hears a loud cocking of weapons. He stops, turns. A dozen soldiers are aiming rifles right at him. He drops his weapon, carefully raises his hands as we cut to exterior, expedition base camp, magic hour / dusk. Daylight is fading as two Havita dugout canoes pull smoothly through the water and bump gently to shore. Marion is helped from a canoe by Von Braun, followed by Indy.
Peter!
And we reveal the camp filled with men, pack mules, trucks, cook fires, activity. Supplies are being sorted, preparations made. And coming through it all is Baron Peter Belasco, archaeologist and author, Marion's suave Hungarian husband. He's handsome, sophisticated, aristocratic, brilliant, hugely successful, and in spite of all those things, actually pretty likable. With him are a group of his men, key among them Victor and Porfi. Victor, also a Hungarian, is Belasco's right-hand man. Porfi, a Peruvian, is boss of the local labor pool. Marion rushes into Peter's arms and gives him a huge kiss, which makes Indy grimace, but only we notice.
Marion, you're all right. There was trouble?
Ronaldo's dead. We might be too, if not for...
Indy smiles with great modesty as she lifts her arm in his direction, but his smile drops as she points instead to...
Dr. Von Braun. Is it?
I saw their forced landing. I was close at hand.
My deepest thanks, Herr Doctor. Thank God you're not hurt. Who's responsible for this?
Rebels, most likely. They would love to sabotage and embarrass President Escalante's government.
It was Russian spies, according to him.
Peter turns and registers Indy for the first time.
And this man is...
Peter, I'd like to meet our expedition foreman, Indiana Jones.
Indiana Jones? My word, I've heard a lot about you.
Nothing good, I'm sure.
On the contrary, my wife speaks very high.
Indy tosses a surprised glance at Marion.
He's being polite.
Nonsense. I know you by reputation as well. I've read your published work. I'm surprised you join us, to say the least. But honored. Now, please, what's this about Russian spies?
Seems they're trying to get their hands on this. So I'm hard pressed to say what they want with a crystal skull of destiny.
Indy opens the knapsack and watches carefully for a reaction. Peter peers in, exhilarated, doesn't miss a beat.
Power, of course. Perhaps beyond imagine. Seems we've attracted the wrong kind of attention.
Porfi, we leave tomorrow at first light. Make sure the men are armed and have extra ammunition. Any questions, take them to your new foreman, Dr. Jones.
Porfi nods respectfully to Indy.
Anything else, senor?
Double the guard tonight. No sense taking chances.
Porfi nods and hurries off, hollering in Spanish as...
The Russians are after us. That makes a rebel attack even more likely. The rebels are communists, very friendly to the Soviets.
They better hope they don't run into El Presidente. He likes to hang communists. Little hobby of his.
Cut to interior Escalante's office night. A pair of hands complete a hangman's noose, tilt up to El Presidente, jolly as a snake, puffing on a cigar.
I love rope. Rope is sturdy and dependable. You know what I love most about rope? Is the love that binds.
He playfully tosses the noose like a lasso. Whip pan with the noose as it flies and snags an Incan statue, revealing Yuri standing before Escalante, flanked by armed soldiers.
This expedition There stands to gain more than you could ever guess. It's not about stones and trinkets. It's about the balance of world power.
Ah, you think I am unaware that I have no resources of my own?
Yuri is taken aback. This comes as news. Escalante reels in his noose and tosses it again, snagging a soldier's rifle.
You amuse me. A communist spy captured on my soil, wishing to strike a bargain. Give me one good reason I should not have you killed.
You lack my knowledge. The stakes are high, and you have much to gain. El Presidente, give me what I need. Men, machines, armaments, and I promise my government will be very generous when the objective is achieved.
You have that backwards. When the objective is achieved, perhaps it is my government which will be generous of yours. We shall see.
He tosses the noose. This time it lands perfectly around Yuri's neck. Escalante reels him in and pulls him close.
Now, tell me about this skull.
Cut to the crystal skull is pulled from the knapsack, kicking reflected firelight. Tilt up to Peter as he raises it.
My friends.
Exterior expedition base camp, night, and turns, revealing it to a gathering of people.
I give you the skull of Los Dioses.
Gasps are heard. We're in a large camp clearing surrounded by tents, campfires, torchlight. Porphy's men patrolling with rifles pause in dread at the sight of the skull. Several of the guards cross themselves. On ground, Sabitos drop to their knees, muttering in superstitious awe. An eerie connotation briefly draws Indy's attention to a truck parked in shadow among the other vehicles. The back of the truck is a large square covered with a tied-down tarp, a cage perhaps. From under the tarp comes animal moans of fear, seemingly triggered by the appearance of the skull. Along with Indy, Marion, and Von Graun, the expedition team members are Bama, a Japanese map expert, Lars, a Swedish psychic, and Bimmelman, a Swiss anthropologist. All regard the skull with reverence and awe, voices hushed.
It's beautiful. And it's horrible.
Lars approaches and holds his hands up to the skull, not touching it, but rather feeling its emanations.
It wishes to make contact. The strong psychic vibrations are strong.
Psychic vibrations? Is it a science or a seance?
Perhaps both, Indiana. I hold in my hand the most mysterious object in all antiquity, one which defies all reason and logic.
Himmelman steps up, using his pince-nez as a magnifying glass.
You know why, Dr. Jones?
It's like the other skulls. It's shaped from a single piece of quartz crystal using methods unknown to us even today. It's cut against the grain, which is impossible without shattering the quartz. And there's no trace of tool marks or sanding even under a microscope.
So, by any standards of modern science, these skulls cannot exist. And yet they do. Fashioned how? By whom? And for what purpose?
Look, I'll admit it's strange, but that doesn't mean it's haunted.
No.
Peter crouches before Indy and raises the skull. The other team members are gathering closer as...
Can you honestly say you haven't felt its hypnotic power? Can you truly say you wouldn't give everything to know what ancient secrets lie within?
Would you?
Indiana, we are men of science. We would gladly clasp hands and jump into hell if that were the pride of knowledge. Tell me I'm wrong.
Indy can't bring himself to deny it. He glances uncomfortably at Marion, who gives him a wry look.
You two would hit it off.
By now, the group is clustered around like kids telling ghost stories at the campfire, the skull weaving a spell on the wall.
And where science fails us, are we not left with legend?
We follow the skull as it gets passed around, everybody getting their turn to feel it, faces exhilarated in the firelight as
Legend says there are 13 skulls in all, fashioned by the gods as they lay dying. And that when all the skulls were brought together, the gods will be reborn and reward mankind with all the knowledge of the universe.
skull is passed to.
You missed the most important part of the legend, Dr. Jones. They say the lost city is a place where wishes are made real. Is this not why men have searched for centuries to conjure one's innermost desires? What a glorious thing that would be.
He passes it to Marion as
What would you wish for, Marion? What are your innermost desires?
she and Indy make accidental eye contact. The talk of innermost desires flusters her, but she covers quickly.
To find the lost city and name it after myself. Marionville.
She hands it off to Lars, whose eyes start rolling up as
Oh, I can feel its thoughts. It wants to lead us to the lost city that awaits us in the Valley of Dreams.
the mood is broken by Indy, who's also rolling his eyes.
Look, maybe you can read its mind. Maybe it does grant wishes. Seen some strange things in my time, so it wouldn't surprise me, but I never found a lost city without being practical. Mr. Hama, you're the map expert.
Hama nods, pulling a sheaf of maps. Indy rises to a camp table, lays out a map of Peru. The others gather as Hama shows Indy a circled area on the map.
Well, according to Belasco saying, we must concentrate on search area in this area, which I have circled.
I was told this by the survivor of the Oxley expedition. I saw him last year in Lima. Poor fellow. His ordeal has left him quite insane.
So we're basing our plan on what some guy in a nut house told you.
Makes as much sense as those pictures you took today that we almost died for.
Victor lays down a stack of 8x10s, and he spreads them with his hand, displaying his aerial photos of the Nazca lines.
Hey, I'm just telling you Oxley's theory. He was convinced these pictograms were some kind of roadmap. Use them in the right sequence and connect the dots, they supposedly lead you straight to the lost city. Trick is figuring out which order the pieces fit. That's the part I don't know.
Mr. Lars, can help us divide the proper order? He is most psychic.
Lars carefully gathers up the photos and map, clasping them to his chest. Camera pushes in as I shall sleep with these under my pillow. My best psychic visions come to me in my dreams. Fear not, my friends. Tomorrow I shall have all of your answers. Dissolve 2, interior tent, night. A hand reaches in, eases the tent flap aside. A shadow crosses the moonlight as somebody enters, but we're at waist level and can't see the face. The figure creeps across the tent and brings a burlap sack into view. The figure reaches into it wearing a thick black rubber glove. As the hand comes out again, we see squirming in the intruder's fingers a tiny black frog with blazing red stripes. Camera pans off to Lars, sleeping on his back, mouth open, snoring softly as we fade to exterior camp, dawn. Misty primordial beauty, the sun peeking through. A sudden hollering commotion sends macaws and parrots to flight as exterior Lars's tent, dawn. Men burst from the tent carrying Lars, everybody yelling at once. They lay him on the ground, crowding around, Indy and Peter going to their knees. They wince as they get a look at Lars's face. The skin is weirdly mottled, the eyes bulging.
The map and photos are gone, stolen.
The gods heard nothing.
It's murder. Where's the blood?
Peter rips open the old man's shirt, checking for
No stab wounds, no bruises.
Wait.
Everybody falls silent as Indy peers at the corpse, leaning closer. Everybody leans closer with him. He slowly presses the lower jaw, causing the mouth to open, and tiny black frog with red blotches squirms out, followed by more. A stream of frogs burst out, leaping in all directions. Everybody screams and hollers, stomping like mad.
Don't touch them. Don't let them get in our skin. Amazonian tree frog, also known as the poison dart frog. Poison dart the natives use. That's where the poison comes from. It's the most deadly venom on earth. One touch and you're gone.
So it's murder.
Some psychic. Didn't see that one coming.
Marion gives Indy an appalled look as
Search the camp. Find out who's missing.
No need. It's that German von Gruen. He left hours before sunrise and took his Jovitos with him.
I'm to blame for this. I should never have trusted him. Now a good man is dead because of me. Seems we have competition, and they will stop at nothing.
Looks that way. But we still have the negatives.
Indy and Peter both look to Marion with concern, seeing how rattled she is by the murder.
Are you all right?
He looks from one to the other, not sure who to respond to.
Fine. Better than him. Strike the camp!
Various angles of slam bang activity, trucks being loaded, pack mules lining up, men mounting horses. In the midst of it all, Indy pauses, hearing a weird howl from that mysterious tarp covered. Victor slams the butt of his rifle against the tarp with a metallic clang. There is a cage under there. Whatever's inside quiets down. Indy turns, sees Peter.
The hell's in that truck?
Animals. Live food for the road. Must keep the troops fed.
Peter takes the reins of his horses and mounts up. Indy does the same, canters to the head of the line and turns.
Move out!
The column moves out, horses and rumbling trucks leaving dust in their wake. Camera booms down, bringing a rough wooden cross into frame in the foreground, Mars's final resting place. Cut to exterior presidential palace morning. Another expedition is moving out. 3 open troop trucks led by a surplus armored personnel carrier. Soldiers are piling onto the trucks, engines firing up and belching smoke. Osgood Turner of the State Department comes stumbling through the mud in his suit as the column moves out. Escalante rides in the turret of the APC, happily puffing a cigar, Yuri at his side. Osgood jogs along hollering. President Escalante, on behalf of the U.S. government, I must protest. That man is a known Soviet agent.
On the contrary, it is your own country's citizen, Indiana Jones, who is the spy. This man has volunteered to help me track him down and foil his evil communist scheme.
Sir, you understand this is a matter of national security. The State Department has instructed me to locate Jones. I must be allowed to monitor this operation. Escalante glances to Yuri, then waves Turner towards the troop trucks with a big smile.
Suit yourself. We don't want an international incident. After all, too bad you didn't bring more sensible shoes.
Turner drops back, slipping and sliding as he tries to jump onto the back of the truck. Soldiers grab him, haul him aboard.
There we go.
If he gets in our way, he can always shoot him and blame Jones.
My sentiments exactly. Now, as to our destination.
Angle shifts to reveal a third man riding on the APC with his back to us. His eyes is turned. It's Von Braun.
You shall remember your promise to me, yeah? I shall be the first man to set foot in the lost city.
To see if wishes can truly be made real. Was that the bargain?
Correct, but also 10% of all the gold and riches we find.
A deal is a deal. Herr Doctor. Unlike your former colleague, Baron Velasco, I consider that at a small price to pay.
Satisfied, Von Braun lays the map out on the turret.
Must concentrate our search. Here.
Camera zoom slowly on the map, closing in on the area circled by Hami. Dissolve to exterior jungle day, as an aerial shot brings us gloriously to that same area on the dissolve. Mountainous jungle as far as the eye can see. The Velasco expedition winds slowly along a ridge. Exterior jungle ridge. Bendy walking point, eyeing his compass. Marion's nearby leading her horse. Andy turns and calls Hama, riding on the back of a truck doing map calculation.
Mr. Hamal, we've entered that area you had circled on the map.
Yes, Indy-san. I've been trying to calculate the next leg of the journey based on your Nesca photos. I believe I have the scale correct, but I am uncertain of the rest. Observe. observe.
He lays his map on the ground. Indy hunkers down with Marion joining them. Thomas got the star pictograph carefully drawn on a clear sheet of plastic, which he lays over the map. It's a 5-pointed star with 1 point longer than the others.
The star comes first, then the burning bird. If I could determine the direction, the star points us.
Hummingbird.
Hummingbird.
I think it's a hummingbird.
Oh, hummingbird. If I could determine the direction, the star points us. It would indicate our path.
Star first, then hummingbird. What do you base that order on?
Abelasco Sen told me he specified the sequence and said he would provide further information as we drew closer.
Star. I don't see how that applies to where we are.
His voice trails off as he notices something. He rises, gazing at the landscape, increasingly amazed as the puzzle becomes clear to him. He points them out. There are 5 mountain peaks spread widely across the landscape before us.
5 peaks. 5 points of a star.
He crouches back down, puts his fingers on the plastic, and revolves it into place. On the map below it, we see the 5 points of the star aligned perfectly with the mountain peaks. Hama lets out a breath of amazement, looks up at Indy.
But which of the peaks are the direction we must go?
1 point of the star is longer than the others. Like an arrow. That's the direction. That'll lead us to the hummingbird, whatever that is.
Brilliant solution.
Indy smiles modestly, shrugging off the phrase, but
Velasco San is a genius.
Indy's face falls. He sees Peter passing by horseback.
Hey, Velasco-san, how'd you know the star came first?
Oh, you don't expect me to give away all my secrets, do you? Trust me.
Peter rides on. Marion tosses Indy a challenging look.
Might as well. He's never wrong.
Still kneeling at the map, Indy checks his compass, muttering.
Yeah, right. I forgot it. You're an excellent judge of character, and he's perfect.
Yeah, and handsome.
If you go for that type. Where'd you two meet anyway?
Well, there was a conference in Budapest. It was spring, and the trees were blooming, and the Danube was sparkling.
Spare me the details.
What's the matter, Jones? Jealous?
No, I'm nauseous.
Oh, yeah? What about that glamour gal you spent time with? Miss Kissy Face, what's her name? The singer?
Willie Scott.
Yeah, her. Still in touch.
On and off. She moved out to Hollywood to be a star. And last I heard, she fell in love and married some big shot director.
Marion freezes in dread, whispering,
Snake.
Well, in your claws, she's a terrific person when you get to know her.
No. Snake!
Indy glances back. A large jungle snake is slithering up behind him. Rising calmly, he scoops the snake up, grabbing it behind the head. It twines furiously in his grasp. She's stunned.
I can't believe you did that.
I got over my fear a long time ago. People change, you know? Relax, it's just a snake.
What? He tosses the snake off into the foliage, walks on as we dissolve too. Exterior dense jungle day. Men are hacking away with machetes with Indy in the lead.
Not looking good up here. This stuff goes on forever.
Marion appears, offering a canteen. He accepts it gracefully, takes his hat off to wipe his brow.
Thanks. We're going to have to backtrack and find a way around this if we want to get the trucks through.
As before, Marion freezes in dread, seeing something on the ground behind him. She points, stuttering.
What, another snake? Yeah, the jungle's full of them.
Marion's trying to speak, but it's stuck in her throat. Indy just grins, takes another swing, blissfully unaware.
Come on, what's with you? Think you've never seen a snake before?
That the biggest damn snake anyone's ever seen is rising up behind him. It rears up and up, taller than Indy now, staring down at him with a head bigger than a horse's. Indy turns, looks up, expression going slack as...
Snake!
And Glump, the snake chomps down on Indy, swallowing him to the waist. The beast rears up, trying to get Indy down its gullet. Indy's legs kicking and flailing in the air. Spearfoot slams back to earth, maw widening and contracting. Within seconds, even Indy's kicking feet are gone. All that's left is his hat, which rolls across the ground. As a final insult, the snake snatches up the hat and swallows that too, then turns and slithers off into the underbrush. Men are running from all directions, converging as...
Hey, snake, it swallowed Indy.
And the chase is on, everybody yelling and hollering, trying to keep up, the snakes moving like greased lightning. Marion snatches a rifle from a bear, fires. The shot misses, exploding the vines as the snake darts off. Others open fire.
Aim for the head.
They keep going, following the heaving foliage to a huge rubber tree rising high in the air. The snake slithers up the trunk and settles in the high branches, hissing at the men below. They're aiming their rifles, trying for a clear shot, when suddenly the tip of a machete erupts through its skin. The monster starts thrashing and convulsing as it gets sliced open from within. Indy emerges covered in goo, expecting firm ground, only to find thin air. He tumbles, grabs a branch, finds himself dangling eye to eye with the snake, and hisses, dying.
Something you ate?
Indy reaches back inside the snake, pulls his hat out of the slime, jams it back on his head, and drops from the branches, landing on his ass as everybody crowds around. He's shaking, teeth chattering, covered with slime. He looks up at the dead snake.
There's something you don't see every day.
Suddenly, an eerie whirring sound is heard. Everybody pauses, listening. A dragonfly comes flitting into view. It wouldn't be worth mentioning except that it's about a yard long.
Or that.
It skims away over their astonished head as we cut to exterior camp night. Indy's sitting by the fire with a blanket over his shoulders, still in shock. He looks up, sees everybody staring at him.
Okay. Gotta admit, something very strange is going on.
What clued you in? The prize-winning snake or the bug the size of a B-17? What was that, Heimleman? Johnny?
These creatures simply don't grow that size in nature.
Mutations of some kind?
But how? What could cause such a thing out here in the wild? Certainly not nuclear testing.
Well, as soon as you guys figure it out, fire me off a memo. Take a ride in a snake today. I'm exhausted.
Shivering under his blanket, Indy totters off to his tent. Interior Indy's tent, night, where a kerosene lamp is glowing. He enters, shuffles to his cot, and throws back the blanket, revealing the tiniest snake we've ever seen, slithering across his pillow. His eyes go wide. Exterior Indy's tent, and his scream echoes from here to Brazil, followed by a lot of crashing and banging as we fade to exterior jungle day. Pavitos dart through the foliage, searching like bloodhounds. One of them comes close to camera, motions to somebody off screen. A pair of boots step into frame. The man crouches down, picks up a rifle shell casing. Tilt up to Von Graun as he sniffs it, motions for a radio phone. A blast of static, then...
We're heading north. We're a day behind.
Exterior open plain day. Roaring wheels churn up the mud. Tilt up to Escalante in the APC turret, radio phone in hand with Yuri beside him.
Excellent. Yeah, Doctor. Anything else?
Exterior jungle. Von Graun's gaze travels up. Hanging in the rubber tree above his head is the biggest dead snake he's ever seen.
Watch out for snakes.
Cut to exterior jungle valley. A lush spot fed by cascading waterfalls. The expedition emerges from the trees and stops in amazement. Marion moves forward, coming closest to camera. She's looking into the air with childlike wonder, smile growing.
Hummingbird.
And hummingbirds the size of hawks flit into the shot, circling and weaving. Indy and the others come up behind her. She laughs, reaching up as more giant hummingbirds appear. Wide reverse angle reveals this spot filled with huge hummingbirds, thousands of them dipping and swirling, rising in clouds from the trees. The expedition moves on, with Marion laughing and leading the way, trucks rumbling at the rear of the column. Resolve to travel montage. And the Velasco expedition slogs on, hacking foliage and fording streams further into the unknown. Indy pauses on a ridge, holds up a Nazca photo as others gather to his side.
Killer whale.
An angle shifts from the photo to a lake in the landscape below. The lake is shaped like a leaping killer whale, matching the photo. Indy points in the direction it's leaping.
That way.
And they move on as a series of dissolves take place against Hama's map, a red line taking us deeper into the jungle, where we find Hama crouched over his maps as Peter lays down two more pieces of the Nazca puzzle, photos of the condor and the spider. As Peter rises and moves on, angle shifts to Indy staring after, curiosity and suspicion gnawing, as the red line, overlaid now with mystical Nazca figures, keeps connecting the dots into the heart of darkness. And montage ends / map vanishes on a final image of a haunted full moon rising eerily over the mysterious jungle below. Dissolve to exterior camp, night, and the moon becomes the crystal skull of destiny on the dissolve, blazing eerily in the glow of a campfire.
We're close now. Close.
Angled to Peter by the campfire, gazing dreamily at the skull, sketching it in his journal. Indy sits brooding nearby with others of the group scattered about. Marion appears next to Indy, hunkering down to add wood to the fire.
You sound sure of yourself.
Why else would the creatures grow so large? Something in the lost city is causing it. The closer we get, the stranger things become.
Hey, what's eating you? Aside from the occasional big snake.
Just wonder where we're getting our information. That's all.
The skull has many tales to tell. One must learn how to listen. Cheerio, Indiana. Thostiosis does exist in the Valley of Dreams, the place where wishes come true.
Indy wants to press the point, but Marion suddenly glances up. Indy turns to see a shooting star streak across the sky.
Star, make a wish.
Suddenly, the sky is streaked with them, a meteor shower.
The sky is filled with wishes.
It's debris falling through the atmosphere.
Oh, use your imagination. They're shooting stars. Ooh, quick.
Marion closes her eyes and makes a wish. She opens them again and catches Indy staring.
No wishes? What about your fortune and glory?
Indy hesitates, caught in her gaze. For a moment, we have a good idea what his wish would have been. Then he grimaces.
Chasing wishes all my life. Like my old man said, if wishes were horses, beggars would ride.
Hopeless.
She goes over to join Peter, who smiles.
I got my wish.
Good answer.
She kisses him. Indy rises, heads over to Cook's serving table. Indy steps up, pouring coffee into his tin cup. He glances back, sees Marion admiring Peter's drawing in the background. Pushing on Indy as he turns towards us, surprised to find himself weighed by sadness and regret for the past. A realization far too late that maybe he still loves her. He sees a last shooting star streak across the sky and grimaces at it. Cut to exterior jungle night, same time. A Jovito runs full tilt through the jungle, dodging trees and leaping obstacles, shield and spear in hand. Cut to interior Escalante's tent. And that same Jovito now squats before us, jabbing his finger on a map and jabbering a mile a minute. Von Ground turns, translates for Escalante and his army captain.
The Jones camp is at the river less than a mile away.
Tomorrow, at dawn, tell the men.
I have to hand it to your Jovatos, El Doctor. And my compliments to you, El Presidente.
Escalante swells with pride, puffing his cigar. Yuri follows the captain from the tent. Exterior Escalante's camp, night, and walks past soldiers huddled at campfires. Osgood Turner is aghast as a soldier hands him dinner, a large barbecued lizard on a stick. Poor Osgood's bed raggles slapping at bugs. Are you kidding me? I can't eat this. Hey, habla americano? Yuri moves on, losing himself in shadow. He comes to the APC, checks to make sure he's unobserved, climbs silently up. Interior APC, and drops into a seat. He switches on a shortwave radio, tubes glowing as it warms up. He dials in a frequency, grabs a map off the wall for reference, and begins sending a signal in Morse code. Interior DC-3 in flight, which comes in over the shortwave radio of a darkened plane in flight. Angle shifts to Soviet Commando number 1, tensely jotting the information. He turns, moving up the fuselage past 7 more commandos, patiently seated. These men are tough, grim, chiseled out of stone. Commander number 1 hands the pilot the jotted information, yelling over the roar of the engines.
Coordinates!
Exterior jungle landscape. DC-3 appears droning over the vast jungle. We see 8 parachutes blossoming, drifting towards Earth as we fade to interior Indy's tent. Indy's in his cot having fevered dreams. As he did the first time he saw the skull, he's hearing terrifying whispers, guttural, inhuman voices speaking in strange tongues. And he wakes to darkness. He sits up, trying to shake off the dream. He splashes his face from the canteen, and he hears a strange, terrifying moan out there in the night amidst all the jungle sounds. He cocks his head, listening. Exterior Indy's tent, and emerges, blanket over his shoulders. Nothing now but the sounds of insects and night birds. But then, there it is again. A low, inhuman sound of primal fear and despair. That sound from that mysterious truck. Indy moves through camp, furtive in the shadows. A flash of lightning bathes the sky in eerie blue, followed by a rumble of thunder. There's a storm approaching. He peeks around a tent, sees movement over by the trucks. He eases closer, trying to see. Victor's at the rear of that tarp-covered truck, waiting with a tin plate of food in his hands. But someone else is there too, hidden from view. The tarp is open at the rear, but the truck is angled away from us. We can't see what's inside. The moans die down. The unseen person backs away from the truck. It's Peter, holding the crystal skull. A flash of lightning makes it glow with blue fire in his hands. Peter nods to Victor, then walks off towards his tent. Alone now, Victor slides the food to the cage through a slot, drops the tarp back, then turns and also departs. Andy detaches from the shadows at the truck and pauses, listening. The thing in the cage is now eating. The sound of it makes Andy's skin crawl. He eases closer. And the eating stops. The creature has sensed his presence. Andy reaches out and pulls the flap of the tarp slowly aside, trying to see what lurks there in the dark. At first, we think it's some kind of beast shifting around. All we see is a dark, hunkered form and a tangle of hair. And then lightning explodes directly above, revealing a human being, a wild man. Scrawny and lice-ridden, eyes insane, hair and beard incredibly long and tangled. He's been crouching in there, eating his food with his fingers. He draws back, moaning like an animal, startled at the sight of Indy. Indy stares in horror, stunned beyond words. The storm breaks, rain starts thundering down. Indy shires back as the man in the cage shifts forward, sniffing as if trying to identify him by smell, grunting like a beast. Suddenly, a skinny white arm shoots out and grabs Indy by the wrist. And the moment physical contact is made, the man's animal behavior seems to vanish, replaced suddenly and shockingly with a scary lucidity. The insane face presses to the bar, its teeth glittering, spewing a guttural voice. To kiss her means death. Death, 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 the gods will judge. Anung Amraj, Amung Dulj.
Who are you?
The wild man just grins, gives Indy a canny look, then. Your father weeps. He fears you dead, my boy. Where's my boy, my Indiana? Startled, Indy jerks his hand away, and the wild man's lucidity is instantly gone. Push in on Indy as the final horror now creeps into his bones, a ghastly dawning of realization as the wild man's face finally rings a bell.
Professor Oxley?
But the man just draws back into the shadows, moaning like a beast, leaving Indy standing in the thundering rain as we fade to exterior camp morning. Daylight shows our geography. We're on a cliffy ridge hemmed on 3 sides by wild descending terrain. On the 4th side, the camp faces out over a sheer cliff that drops into a swift river below, which flows down the canyon to a distant valley. Camera follows a Nazca photo being carried by hand, the pictograph, humanoid form of the god. It's Peter bringing it to Hama at a camp table. Everybody gathers closer as
Mr. Hama, I present the final piece of the puzzle.
You sure?
Peter nods. The moment is electric. Everybody breathless with awe and excitement, except for Indy. He's been standing there all the time, just smoldering. The man's deeply pissed.
Ask him how he knows. Go on, ask him.
Does it matter?
It does to me, you son of a...
Wham! Indy stuns everybody by throwing a powerhouse punch that sends Peter flying across the camp table, collapsing it in a rain of flying maps and splintering wood. Hama jumps up in shock. Peter hits the ground as people scatter.
Indy!
Indiana, this is intolerable. You've gone mad.
Yeah, mad's the word, all right.
He jumps over the ruined table and lands another punch just as Peter's rising to his knees. The blow spins Peter around, sprawling him again in the dust. Andy stands over him with fists weaving, ready to deck him again.
What'd you do, Velasco? Read the skull's mind, huh? Ask it 20 questions? Or did you have help?
Victor darts in to protect his boss, but Peter waves him off.
No, Victor. No need for that. Just a misunderstanding, that's all.
Victor backs off. Peter rises painfully to his feet.
It's nothing two civilized men can't work out between.
And wham! Peter punches Indy in the face and knocks him on his ass. Indy shakes his head to unrattle his brains, then looks up really steamed. He scrambles to his feet, and Indy and Peter proceed to methodically pound the living daylights out of each other, swapping forceful, controlled punches, circling and swinging, each man giving as good as he gets, driving each other back by turns, neither showing mercy nor expecting any. People scatter as the brawl takes the combatants right through a tent, ripping it out of the ground, stakes and all. They wrestle out from under the collapsed canvas, lunging to their feet, squaring off again, when blam! A rifle shot blows a huge gut of dust from the ground at their tees. They pause, turning to see.
Enough!
She's got a lever-action Winchester, and she's pissed. Indy and Peter glance at each other, wondering if they should push their luck. She pumps another round in the chamber.
You both lost your minds. What the hell's going on here?
That's the guy in the cage.
From the look on her face, she has no clue what he's talking about. Indy crosses to her intense.
Marion, tell me you didn't know. Look me in the eye and tell me.
No what?
Indy pushes past her to the truck, pulls a knife, starts slitting the tie downs.
Psychic you hired, the Swede, shouldn't have bothered. Your husband had one stashed all along.
And hauls the canvas tarp off the cage. The wild man cringes within, blinded by daylight, terrified. People gather, shocked, almost speechless at the sight of him.
My God, what is this?
Professor Vernon Oxley, the sole survivor of the expedition 3 years ago. Isn't that right?
Peter meets Marion's gaze. She's stunned, staring at him as if he were a stranger, hoping he'll contradict this somehow.
Peter?
Would you have gone along with me if I told you the truth?
No.
Of course not. I know how sentimental you Americans are. He's better off than I found him.
Better than the asylum?
There was no asylum. Are you so naive? This country is hardly progressive with the mentally ill. I found him in a traveling circus. The wild man of Los Dioses. Peasants would pay their pesos to jeer at him in a pit of squalor and filth. Should I have left him there? Would that have pleased you more?
He deserves the best care there is.
And he shall get it as soon as the task is complete. Know this. Whatever happened to him in the Lost City has reconfigured his brain. He is a psychic miracle, and he and the skull are the divining rod leading us to the greatest archaeological find of all time.
Not if I can help it.
Indy draws his arm back to punch him again, but freezes as...
That is not your decision to make.
3 dozen soldiers suddenly appear from the tree line, advancing with M1 carbine rifles aimed. In their midst is...
I am now in charge of this expedition. Senora Velasco, be so good as to discard the rifle.
Marion hesitates, eases the hammer down, tosses the rifle.
That goes for everybody.
Cured by her look, everybody else starts disarming, gun belts and rifles dropping into the dust.
What's the meaning of this?
Must I remind you that all antiquities in Peru belong to me, and that the penalty for withholding is quite severe? It has come to my attention you have a certain crystal skull. Bring it to me now.
Marion tosses a reluctant look to Indy and Peter, but What choice do they have? She turns, heading for a tent as Yuri and Von Graun also emerge from the jungle, trailed by the Javitos and Osgood Turner. Peter bristles at the sight of Von Graun, while Indy would love to break Yuri's neck.
Von Graun, you traitorous pig!
You should have met my price. You've only yourself to blame.
Making new friends, Yuri?
You left me little choice. It is that obnoxious habit you have of staying alive.
Marion reappears. Escalante motions her forward. She brings in the knapsack. He reaches in, pulls out the crystal skull, holds it up for all to see. Sunlight blazes through it, dazzling the eyes and the senses. The reactions are immediate and intense. Soldiers draw back, muttering nervously. The Javitos drop to their knees.
It is exquisite.
Not
It
so,
is
not
mine.
so, not so fast.
Yuri yanks the revolver out of Von Graun's holster, knocking the German on his ass in the bargain. In the same swift motion, Yuri circles out into the clearing, facing Escalante with the gun leveled at his head. Escalante smiles derisively.
Never trust a communist.
I hate to ruin the moment, but I am in control of this expedition.
With what? That pea shooter? Bah, a mere 6 bullets.
Yuri thumbs the hammer back. The soldiers tense forward, rifles aimed, ready to fire.
It's enough.
Yuri, no, don't be crazy.
Nice bluff. 7 men up front.
7 soldiers rush forward and raise their rifles, forming an impromptu firing squad. Indy's heart is in his throat.
I'll see you 6 and raise you. No bluff. Ready? Aim!
But suddenly the tree line on Yuri's side of the clearing erupts with machine gun fire. All we see are muzzle flashes shredding the foliage. The 7 men of Escalante's firing squad are instantly cut down. In the shock silence that follows, the 8 Soviet commandos, summoned by Yuri, rush from the trees, machine guns leveled.
I'll see your 7 and raise you. 8 Zhukov commandos.
Escalante's remaining soldiers are panicky, but stand their ground, rifles aimed. It's a standoff, tension thick. Yuri turns to a commando who tosses him a machine gun. Yuri looks to Marion, motions her towards Escalante.
Now I really must insist. And the skull to the lady, and she will bring it to me.
Marion starts across the clearing, looking to both Indy and Peter. All are holding their breath as she moves to Escalante. He's seething, furious, weighing the odds.
No.
El Presidente, I wish not to create an international incident, but I will kill you.
I have 24 rifles aimed at you and your men. I am not afraid to die. Are you?
Indy's watching this whole thing like a ping pong match.
Marion, you want to step to one side?
Take aim. Prepare to fire on my order.
Commandos, take your targets. Prepare to kill them all.
The men are amped up, fingers tightening on triggers, ready to open fire. Escalante opens his mouth to shout the order. He pauses, listening. A strange sound has been building during the standoff, some weird buzzing, growing louder. A hush falls. Everybody listening now. Birds are taking to the air, flapping out of the trees in panic. Softly,
What is that?
Indy glances towards the trees. Some unseen thing emerges from the tree line, coming through the grass, leaving a long furrow. And it pokes from the grass into the clearing. A red army ant, a big one, 9 inches long, feelers twitching the air.
Big ant.
And now dozens more furrows out through the grass. The buzzing swells louder. The very trees start to shake.
A lot of big ants.
And a tidal wave of ants bursts through the tree line like an express train, defoliating everything in their path. Pandemonium erupts as the ants overrun the camp. Everybody running and screaming in all directions, horses bolting, mules kicking and braying, men trying to fight back with anything in hand, grabbing up shovels, others firing rifles and machine guns in sheer panic. Indy and Marion grab up shovels and join the fight, smashing ants right and left, increasingly horrified. They see a mule get swarmed by ants, kicking hysterically as it's brought to ground and stripped to the bone in seconds. Himmelman trips and falls, overrun by a wave of ants, and his skeleton is revealed moments later as the insects move on. More men are swarmed, including Von Brown Savitos. Skeletons start littering the ground. Indy and Marion keep fighting, falling back towards the river.
One, move.
And Indy turns, sees Victor rushing up with a flamethrower strapped to his back, aiming a nozzle right at him. Indy darts out of the way as Victor pulls the trigger and a stunning gout of fire erupts from the nozzle. He moves forward, hosing the ants with flame, roasting them, driving them back, but they're also swarming around him in waves, encircling him from behind, closing like a noose.
Behind you!
But it's too late. They're streaming up Victor's body, chewing clothing and flesh. He screams, spraying the fire in huge wild arcs, setting tents aflame. And he throws himself on Mary and knocks her to the ground, saving them both from getting roasted as flame sweeps over their heads. And Victor goes down, covered in an undulating wave, and the hose must have gotten chewed through because a fireball erupts as Victor explodes. Still shielding Marion on the ground, Andy looks at the smoke and flames and sees Yuri. Comes upon Escalante in the confusion, lays him out with a vicious punch. He grabs the skull, stuffs it in his knapsack, and escapes towards Oxley's truck. We follow Yuri running through sheer chaos. Several trucks explode. Men and horses are leaping off the cliff into the river to escape the ants and the flame. Yuri comes to Oxley's truck and pulls open the driver's door. He tosses the knapsack in, jumps in behind the wheel, reaches for the ignition, but the keys are gone.
Looking for these?
Yuri turns. Indy's just outside the door dangling the keys. Wham! Yuri gets a fist in the face, knocked cold. Indy grabs him by the feet, hauls him out, hollers to Marion.
Get in!
Where's Peter?
Across the clearing they see, Peter runs from the smoke with a wave of ants at his heels. He makes it to the edge of the cliff and jumps in the river.
He's okay, come on.
Your truck, day. Marion jumps in, scoots across the seat. Indy piles in after her, slams the door.
Now do you believe there are Russian spies?
Hama suddenly appears and jumps in on the passenger side, Marion getting squeezed in between them.
Ants.
Damn it.
Big ants.
Yeah, I know.
Ants start swarming up the windows, blotting out daylight. Indy cranks the ignition, but the engine won't start. He frantically pumps the gas, keeps trying as ants come crawling in through the dashboard vents. Marion screams, kicks the first one to paste, everybody blocking up the vents with whatever's at hand. Andy glances back through the rear window into Oxley's cage, fully expecting to see Oxley reduced to bones by now, but his jaw drops. Exterior truck bed. Because the wild man sits hunkered in his cage, calm and smiling, eyes glazed in a fugue state, looking around at all the pretty ants swarming his bars and floor. Whatever psychic aura he's projecting, it's causing the ants to go around him, making him look like Moses parting the Red Ant Sea. Interior truck. But Andy doesn't have time to think about it. Ants are chewing through the roof and doors. He tries the key again, and bingo, it vrooms to life. He slams it in gear and floors it, hitting the wipers to clear ants off the windshield. Exterior truck. The truck rumbles away from us, dumping a trail of gasoline from the fuel line beneath the truck. The spreading flames ignite the fuel. As the fire races along the ground after the truck, we whip pan to Yuri, staggering to his feet, frantically slapping huge ants off his body.
Commandos, after them!
As Yuri darts off, we whip pan again and finds...
They have my skull!
Interior moving truck. Indy glances in the side view mirror, sees the fire following them along the trail of gasoline.
Lousy ants. They chewed through the fuel line.
Marion and Hama turn simultaneously, gaping in horror. Indy floors it fast, keeping ahead of the flames, wrestling the steering wheel, veering around trees, but soon they're going too fast. Indy barely avoiding tipping the truck over. He stomps the brakes, trying to slow down, but the peel sinks straight to the floor.
And the brakes.
Exterior truck / slope, and now it's Mr. Toad's wild ride times 10.
Yes.
As they hurtle down the wild open terrain of the hill, Indy barely in control, swerving and missing trees by inches, sailing into the air over boulders and slamming Oxley back down again. Cresting the hill behind them is an army of pursuers, training trucks, Soviet commandos on horseback, Escalante's APC, anything and everything. The pursuers surge down the slope, exchanging gunfire, everybody trying to beat everybody else's prize. A truck flips and rolls, causing other vehicles to collide and swerve, jamming up and falling behind. 4 Soviet commandos leap their horses over the wreckage, surging ahead of the pack at a full gallop. And behind them, that pesky fire is still racing along the trail of fuel. Indy's truck.
I think we can outrun them.
They suddenly realize they're heading for a rocky ledge. Indy can't brake. They go sailing off the edge and crunch. The truck lands in a tree, slamming to a stop in the branches. The engine dies. Marion gives Indy a withering look.
Only you could park us in a tree.
Only you could drive me out of mine.
Indy starts cranking the key, but the engine's flooded. Behind them, the 4 commandos ride up and leap from the saddles with machine guns, yelling for them to surrender. Not far behind, that trail of fire travels ever closer.
I think they want us to surrender.
Or it will blow up before that happens.
Suddenly, the engine roars to life.
German engineering.
Andy floors it. The truck lurches, wheels spinning in the branches, the tree bending forward with the shifting weight. The commandos rush closer, hollering for them to stop. Andy keeps flooring it, truck lurching, dipping closer to the ground as the tree keeps bending more and more. Yuri gallops up fast, yelling.
Shoot them! Just shoot!
And suddenly the truck breaks free and roars off, causing the tree to snap hugely back in the other direction, and the tree swats the 4 commandos to paste. Thwack! Yuri is stunned. The flames whoosh by, still pursuing Indy's truck along the gas lane. Yuri gallops after the truck, racing the fire. Indy's truck careens onward, brakeless, barely in control. Yuri gallops up and does a horse-to-truck transfer, grabbing the bars of Oxley's cage and hauling himself from the saddle. Yuri is now clinging to the side of the truck where Indy can see him in the side view mirror.
Indy, I want that skull!
Yuri reaches for the machine gun slung across his back. Indy yanks his revolver, but before shots can be fired,
Oh my god!
the edge of a cliff is coming up. Indy goes goggle-eyed, so does Yuri. A cliff ahead and flames behind, and no time to think about either. The truck sails off into space. Yuri is thrown clear, vanishing in free fall towards the river below as the flames finally catch up, whooshing through the air in a trail of gasoline. And the gas tank explodes beneath the truck in midair, kicking the ass end of the vehicle up on a ball of flame that sends it cartwheeling end over end into the river, where it lands right side up with a huge splash. The flames extinguish. But the current's strong, and before you know it, our heroes are getting swept downriver. And they're not alone. The river is littered with men and horses that jumped into the river to escape the ants, also going for a ride. Moving shot from Riverbank. The truck gets swept along. Escalante's APC roars into frame in the foreground, swerving around trees or mashing them flat to keep up. Von Ground and some soldiers are hanging out for dear life. Escalante's in the turret, hollering into his radio phone.
Into the river, use the boats.
Riverbank, further back. Escalante's men are scrambling to pull 5 collapsible boats off the sides of the trucks and launch them as El Presidente's voice crackles from the radio.
If they escape, I'll have you all shot. Every last man.
Soldiers pile into the wooden canvas. Longboats are swept off by the current. Riverbank, further down. Yuri's remaining 4 commandos see the longboats coming. Without hesitation, the 4 men to 4 perfect dives into the river at the exact same moment. A boat in the river, and the Russians pop up at the side of a boat, grab the soldiers, toss them over, and pull themselves aboard to commandeer it. One commander takes position with his machine gun at the prow while the others work the oars. Indy's truck slash in the river. Indy, Marion, and Hama are getting swept downriver in an increasingly wild ride, rapids appearing here and there, water pouring through the cab. Indy valiantly struggles with the wheel, but there's really no way to steer this thing. They carome off a boulder, moving ever faster with the current. Back of truck, while a hand thrusts out of the frothing current and grabs hold of Oxley's cage. Yuri hauls himself from the water, climbing up the bars to the top of the cage over Oxley's astonished head. The Russian makes his way forward, using the bars as handholds. In the truck, Yuri suddenly kicks in the driver's side window, landing a boot heel in Indy's face. Before Indy can react, Yuri kicks him in the face again, knocking him senseless. Yuri pulls Indy out the window and drops him in the river. Indy vanishes in the current as Yuri slides in and replaces him behind the wheel. Marion and Hama are horrified. In the river, Indy pops up, gasping for air. He looks around, sees a horse being swept towards him, whinnying in panic. Indy grabs the reins, calming the animal as he urges the horse towards shore. The beast swimming and snorting frantically, hooves finally finding some traction on the riverbed. And Indy rides the horse out of the water onto solid ground, charging to a full gallop along the riverbank. Along the riverbank, Indy rides full out, veering around trees, chasing the truck as it sails downriver. Across the river on the opposite bank in the background, Escalante's APC is also charging along, smashing trees. On the APC, Von Ground spots Indy across the river, nudges Escalante to get his attention, points. Escalante swings his 50 caliber machine gun around and opens fire. Indy gallops like crazy as the tracer fire from across the river rips the trees and branches to fragments above his head. He ducks, loses himself in the trees, charging ever onward. In the river, while the truck is getting swept along faster and faster, bucking down increasing white rapids. Riverbank, further ahead. Indy comes galloping up to the edge of the drop. The river is a raging white torrent below. He looks upriver and sees the truck come into view, getting swept around the bend. Indy's gotten ahead of it. Frantic, he tries to gauge the distance in the middle of the river. It seems an impossible jump, but there are several huge trees lining the drop with long jungle vines trailing off the edge. Indy spurs the horse, grabs the vine, swings clean out of the saddle, and wildly out over the river. A pendulum of enormous distance that lands in the middle of the rapids. He plummets and vanishes in the froth as the truck rides the rapids, white water spewing over the hood and past the windows. Suddenly from ahead, Indy appears in the blink of an eye, swept up the hood and crashing right through the windshield. Yuri gets Indiana Jones and about 50 gallons of water right in the face. Indy nails him with a brutal flurry of punches. Wham, 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 and shoves him out the side window. Yuri vanishes in the rapids. Indy grabs the rail, yells to Marion over the water, thundering through the cab.
Anything happened while I was gone?
Suddenly, gunshots. A bullet blows the side view mirror to fragments. They look back. The longboats of soldiers are on their tail, rifles blazing, riding the rapids, which are getting even worse. Pursuing boat number 1 smacks headlong into a boulder and comes apart in an instant, hurling shattered wood and screaming men in all directions to vanish in the churning water. Pursuing boat number 2.
Shoot those bastards!
The soldiers let loose a blistering barrage. One particularly brave, stupid soldier rises up with rifle poised, trying for a clear shot, and a passing tree branch takes him right out of the boat with a sickening thud. Pursuing boat number 3, Yuri's commandos. They're catching up to Indy's truck. The commando on the prow makes a spectacular leap, grabs onto Oxley's cage, unslings his machine gun, and Oxley bites his knuckles. The commando plummets into the churning water. Hissed. The other Russians open fire. In the truck, Marion ducks as bullets slam into a dashboard before her and rip it to pieces.
Let's see, how could this make the situation worse?
Indy tosses her a "you had to ask" look. Suddenly, the truck seems to drop out of frame as the river takes a turn down an extreme 30-degree slope, the rapids becoming the nastiest, most awesome whitewater imaginable. The truck and the boats come slanting up into view through raging walls of water and crashing back down again, taking the hairiest ride ever seen. In fact, it's not a ride so much as a controlled fall down the mountain via rapids. Indy and his pursuers go slamming through an awesome series of dips, seeming to vanish completely in the torrential rapids before bobbing back into view. Massive rocks loom at every turn, threatening to smash into pieces. The truck and boats are swept along like corks in a flood, whipping through wild spinning turns with every change of direction. Indy's truck. Indy, Marion, and Hama are just gasping and holding on for dear life, water surging through the cab.
We're gonna die in these rapids.
The rapids I'm worried about. It's the falls.
The what?
Marion's eyes bug out. A waterfall as they go airborne. An endless gut-churning moment of freefall, with pursuing boats hurtling into midair right behind them. Everybody's screaming as they drop back into the rapids and get swept along toward the second waterfall, and going airborne again. More screaming freefall. Men spilling into the water as boats overturn and fly apart, swept along towards yet a third waterfall. And the truck hurtles awesomely into the air again. Behind them, more men and boats go flying. The boat with Yuri's commandos takes a nasty bounce and shoots off the falls at a bad angle. The commandos are screaming and holding on as they sail through the air on a long, lethal arc that ends with them going splat in the rocks below in an explosion of wood fragments and cartwheeling bodies. Indy's truck. The river levels out. Marion and Hama are overjoyed.
We made it. We're alive.
But Indy has remained silent and intense, staring straight.
Where to go?
All eyes turn forward. Shit! The fourth and by far the biggest waterfall cascades from the cliffs. The truck rockets over the edge as if shot from a cannon, free-falling endlessly towards the water below and impacting with an awesome splash. Happily, the river widens considerably here, so no more rapids. Unhappily, the river is also a lot deeper, and the truck sinks nose first as the current carries it along. Indy, Marion, and Hama pop to the surface, gasping. Andy's got the knapsack with the skull, slings it around his neck.
Swim for shore.
The rear of the truck is bobbing in the water, barely breaking the surface. Oxley is trapped, arms flailing through the bars. Indy grabs onto the cage, swept along, struggling to open the latch before Oxley drowns. It's padlocked. Indy draws his revolver, blows the lock off, wrenches the door open. He pulls Oxley out, swimming desperately towards the riverbank. Indy pulls Oxley to safety, crawls a few feet up the muddy bank, and collapses face down. He tries to catch his breath.
Professor, are you okay?
And glances up just in time to see Oxley's naked feet dart out of frame. Stunned, Indy shoves himself off the ground, trying to see where Oxley went.
Professor!
Indy takes off in pursuit. Various angles, and the chase takes them through denser and denser jungle. Oxley always 2 steps ahead. In fact, Indy never really sees him clearly, just catches bare glimpses of him vanishing around trees or as a fast-moving blur through the leaves.
Professor, wait!
Indy's getting lost, disoriented in all this green. He pauses to listen, hoping to pinpoint his Oxley by sound, and the wild man swings overhead on a vine, appearing and vanishing like a sight gag. Indy gapes up, climbs the nearest tree to go after. In the trees, and the chase continues through the trees, Oxley in glimpses, fast as an ape, swinging from vine to vine, catching branches and hurling on like a gymnast off the bars. With Indy not far behind, swinging on vines but lacking Oxley's animal agility. Indy lands on a branch, desperately trying to keep his balance, and realizes he's running the vines. He pulls his whip and cracks it forward, using his whip now to keep swinging from tree to tree until crack. A branch breaks with his weight, and Indy plummets to the ground, landing flat on his back. He sits up, groaning. No sign of Oxley, no sound now, but the jungle crickets.
Professor!
From a distance,
Oh,
Indy?
Indy is swept with relief, realizing he would have been devastated if something had happened to him. He scrambles to his feet, blunders through the growth towards a clearing.
Marion, thank God. I thought I lost you.
New angle, and he freezes as he emerges into the clearing. Not 20 yards away, Yuri. He's got Marion by the wrist and the machine gun pressed to her side while Hama stands helpless by.
I have no idea how much trouble you've caused me. Discard the gun.
Indy pulls his pistol, tosses it.
Or go, Yuri.
Of course. Just hand over the skull.
Indy nods, pulls the knapsack from around his neck. Yuri prods Marion forward to retrieve it. She starts across the clearing but pauses halfway as suddenly Escalante's APC crashes to the trees into the clearing and lurches to a stop. Stampeding into view are a dozen remaining soldiers, soaked to the bone and aiming rifles. They've got a group of prisoners, Peter, Osgood Turner, Porphy, 2 of Porphy's men. Marion's delighted to see her husband, a reaction Indy doesn't share.
Peter.
Marion, are you all right?
She nods. Escalante descends from his turret and jumps to the ground, followed by Van Brown.
El Presidente. How convenient.
There's nowhere you can run that I cannot follow. And as you see, you are quite outnumbered. Surrender your machine gun.
We're running out of guys, Yuri. Do as he says.
Very well.
Senora Velasco, bring me the weapon. No, please, I insist she move out of harm's way. I'll do it.
Marion's impressed with Peter. Indy grimaces, shit, why didn't I think of that? Peter walks out bravely to take her place. Marion moves aside, gazing after him adoringly. Peter steps up to Yuri, the 2 men now standing face to face.
Take it, Peter. Take the gun.
Peter reaches up, takes the machine gun from Yuri, both men glaring into each other's eyes. Beat. Peter abruptly turns, machine gun blazing in his hands, raking it back and forth, mowing down all of Escalante's men. Only Escalante and Von Braun are left standing. In the shocked silence that follows,
I never thought you'd get here.
It wasn't for lack of trying.
Marion stares at Peter in utter disbelief, rocked to her heels, trying to process what just happened.
Peter?
He's a spy for the Russians. I should have known. You were in it with them all along.
Yes, it was quite awkward when you showed up instead.
Spy for the Russians?
Well, yes. Sorry, darling. I didn't know how to tell you.
You think you know a guy?
She hauls off and punches him in the nose, whipping his head to one side. He looks back at her, exasperated.
Weakness, aren't we overreacting?
Oh, this isn't like leaving the cap off the toothpaste, Peter. You're a goddamn Russian spy.
Indeed. But you're not going to let a little thing like that come between us, are you? Mary, please don't ask me to make a choice.
I'm American, Peter, through and through. You knew that when you married me. What did you expect me to do, convert?
Indy and Yuri have been trading embarrassed glances during all this. Indy clears his throat.
Look, you guys have the guns, right? So you win. I don't want the rest of us just walk away.
Peter spins to Indy, machine gun poised, and pauses, gazing up in wonder as he realizes there they are, softly.
Are you stupid as well as blind?
Indy follows his gaze, and we reveal an awesome sight above the trees. The canyons end at this spot. Clouds are just clearing the sun, splashing light across the cliffs on both sides of the river, into which are carved two giant stone faces gazing out over the valley. They're like sentinels or gateposts. Their visages are humanoid, though not really human.
Behold, the great stone sentinels of Los Dioses, the twin gods that mark the entrance to the Valley of Dreams. We are here.
Peter prods Indy up the rise, Yuri herding the others along behind them, and camera booms up to reveal the Valley of Dreams spread before us. Ringed by mountainous volcanic ridges, the floor of the valley overgrown with lush green rainforest. Peeking through the jungle are amazing ancient ruins, at the very center of which stands the grandest building of all, the great stone temple of the gods. Also amazing is the fact that the rushing river cascades from the canyon into a man-made aqueduct that crosses the valley right to the great stone temple's doorstep. More on that later. Indy and the others take it all in, stunned.
It is the greatest find of all time.
Yes. But it belongs to the Kremlin now. Sorry, Indy. Your knowledge of this place must die with you.
Peter glances to Marion, then looks back down at Escalante's APC. 5 50-gallon fuel drums are mounted on the rear.
Porphy, bring your men.
Wipe 2, interior cave day. We are inside one of the great stone faces on the cliff. The cave entrance is the mouth, with the eyes above letting in streams of daylight like windows. Tilt down 2. The fuel drums stand together in the middle of the cave. Sitting on the ground with their backs to the drums and tied in a circle around them with Escalante's own rope are Indy, Marion, Hama, Escalante, Von Ground, and Osgood Turner. Porphy and his men stand by watching as Peter and Yuri tighten the knots. Marion glares at Peter as he kneels to check her rope. If looks could kill.
I want you to come with me.
I want a divorce.
Next to her, Indy reacts with a big sheepish grin. That's the best news. But on the other hand, they're all about to die. Peter raises a bundle of TNT before Marion.
Then you shall have.
And leans over her, packing it into the drums. Meanwhile, Yuri comes around to Indy's side, uncoiling a long fuse.
You loved America.
But Mother Russia is my soul. Our little Cold Wars will heat up someday soon. There will be a final reckoning, an apocalyptic struggle to inherit the earth. For the sake of humankind, our side must win.
Right. The great communist utopia. Heard it all before. You try anything, our side will bury.
Right.
Peter steps in, crouching down, intense.
I think not. The crystal skull has spoken. In the lost city, there lurks a psychic force beyond our wildest dreams, perhaps greater than the atomic bomb. We shall learn to control it. Use it against you.
Wishes were horses.
No, Indy. If wishes were weapons. Imagine to peer across the world and know your enemy's secrets. Freeze their missiles in their silos. Assassinate their leaders, all with the power of our minds.
New frontier of psychic warfare. That was Stalin's dream. Your precious country shall pass into history, as extinct as ancient Rome. What is our little marriage compared to that?
He rises, joins Yuri. They move towards the mouth of the cave, playing out yards of fuse.
Now, if you'll excuse us, the next great adventure lies ahead. The world that mocks dream.
But they freeze at the sound of rifles being cocked. They turn. Porphy and his 2 men have M1 rifles aimed at them.
I myself am not political, senor.
Wipe 2. Peter and Yuri are also tied to drums. Marion's between Indy and Peter. Angle to Porphy, tightening their knots.
Me? I'm a capitalist. I believe in money.
Porphy rises. Escalante is ecstatic.
Excellent work, Comperio. You shall be rewarded. Untie me.
Porphy's pals, Pablo and Francisco, toss uncomfortable glances his way, wondering if they should, but Porphy shakes his head, reassuring.
Nah. See, me and the boys talk it over, and we think all the antiquities in Peru belong to us. I don't know about this psychic stuff, but the legend says the city is made of gold. Vaya con Dios, everybody.
He grabs the crystal skull, lights the fuse, and hustles out of the cave. Gone. The fuse hisses and sputters merrily along.
Yuri, how long's that fuse?
About 3 minutes, give or take.
Can you reach with your foot, snuff it out?
It's a polytensive coil with titanium and magnesium fibers. You can't snuff it out or cut it with an axe. It even burns underwater.
Great.
May I suggest that...
Shut up. I can't believe you were going to kill me. I don't want to hear a word out of you.
Loose ropes. Anybody.
Everybody twists and strains, but the knots are tight.
I suggest we rock the drums. Perhaps we can tip them over.
Right. All right, my way first. On 3. 1, 2, 3.
The whole group rocks towards Indy, giving it all they've got, straining like crazy. The drums aren't budging an inch.
Well, this is stupid.
They give up, sagging. Indy shifts his leg, trying to get his boot up to where his hands are tied to his chest.
I got a knife in my boot. If I could just reach it.
But it's no good. His fingers hover a good 12 inches shy of success. He gives up in frustration.
Not as limber as I used to be.
So that's it?
I'm afraid so.
Pause. She turns to look at him. Their eyes meet.
Sorry, I got you into this.
I thought I got you into this.
Pete. Andy's working up the courage to say something. He drops his voice to a whisper so the others can't hear.
Marion, listen, I just wanted to tell you that. Well, I just wanted to say I still.
On the other side of Marion, we see Peter turn his head.
What?
I love her. Loud enough for you?
I can't believe you two are discussing this in my presence.
Hey, the marriage is over. Live with it.
He turns his attention back to Marion. She's dewy-eyed.
You're just saying that because we're about to die.
Well, it does help ease the fear of commitment, but I mean it.
They lean towards each other, straining against their ropes. Their lips touch. A lovely kiss. As Indy draws back.
To kiss her means death. Guess he was right.
Ooh.
And his gaze shifts, looking past her.
Oxley.
Marion turns as the wild man at the mouth of the cave.
Professor, help us. Can you understand what I'm saying?
Oxley scurries in. He draws near, touches Indy's face. Again, that strange lucidity overcomes him, that ragged whisper. You're the man in the water.
That's right. Now, please, there's a knife in my boot. We're all about to go boom. Yuri.
Oh, 60 seconds, maybe less.
Death, death, death. The gods will be plucking many pretty skulls today, yes, many pretty skulls.
Andy, this guy is giving me the creeps.
Don't help, okay? Professor, look at the rope. Can you cut the rope?
Thick, very thick. Oxley puzzles over the rope for a moment, then surprises Indy by abruptly grabbing it in both hands and gnawing it.
What's happening?
He's chewing on it.
Wonderful, said Travis. Can you try explaining the knife again? We don't have time for...
Oxley chews through it and whips his head up, teeth bared, howling in animal triumph. Indy and Marion are stunned. Fast, Indy wrestles out of his ropes, jumps to his feet, yanks his knife from his boot. He slices Marion's rope first, pulls her to her feet, then Hama, then the others, then only Peter and Yuri are still tied up. Indy hesitates, throws a look to Marion, tempted to leave. He sighs. He can't. He's the hero. He grabs up an M1 rifle left at the cave entrance by Porphy, tosses it to her. She works the ball. Daz?
He's in charge of the expedition. Got that?
10 seconds. There will be no one in charge.
Indy leads down and slices their ropes. Exterior cave, and they all burst from the mouth of the cave, jumping for it down the incline as waboom! A huge explosion blows flame out of the mouth and eyes of the stone face. A moment later, the face collapses in a smoking hole in the cliff. Resolve 2, exterior Grand Plaza of the Great Temple Bay. And our group struggles into the lost city, passing vine-shrouded colonnades and ancient broken archways, entering the Grand Plaza of the Great Stone Temple of the Gods. The temple is pyramid-shaped in the Mayan style, gigantic, with various levels working upwards towards a crown of altars and odd battlements. It's backlit by the late sun, throwing an awesome shadow across the crumbled plaza. Unlike Mayan buildings, though, this one has a massive open entrance, looming like a dark open doorway some 60 or 70 feet high. As mentioned before, the river from the canyons is funneled here by the aqueduct. Raging white rapids thunder across the plaza along the stone channel and disappear directly into the heart of the great temple through that towering open doorway. Oxley grows more terrified as they approach, cowering at the sight of the building. As they reach the building's shadow, he hunkers down, gibbering in raw animal panic. Indy crouches before him, grabs his flailing wrists in a firm grip, and the instant physical contact is made. Oxley calms, and that strange lucidity returns. Indy looks him in the eye.
Professor, what happened to you here? What are you so afraid of?
I can't remember. A mysterious wind kicks up, billowing dust across the plaza and sending a chill of premonition through them all.
Indy?
He turns. Marion is staring up at the temple. He follows her gaze and sees a silhouetted figure is revealed through the billowing dust. He's on the steps leading up to the first level of the temple, just standing there, watching him, backlit by sun. The figure comes slowly down the steps, a machete dangling in one hand, and the other he's cradling a knapsack in his arm and holding what appears to be a glowing head. The machete slips from his fingers, clinking down the steps. He reaches the bottom and approaches us. It's Porphy, mind blown, one side of his face raw from a second-degree burn, his clothes streaked with blood. The glowing head he's holding is the crystal skull. It drops from his shaking hand. Indy reacts fast, catching it.
Porphy, where are your friends?
Porphy is disoriented, trying to speak.
Pablo, he touched the gold and was consumed by the fire of the gods, and the skull spoke to me. It said we had defiled this place. It said we had to make a sacrifice to appease the anger of Los Dioses.
He turns, gaze traveling back up the steps from where he came. Drops of blood lead up to the first level of the temple where a headless body lies seeping blood down the steps.
So I cut off Francisco's head.
Porphy abruptly yanks a decapitated head from the knapsack, holding it by the hair. The mouth is thrown open in a silent scream, eyes frozen wide and staring up at the heavens. Porphy's expression now matching his dead friend's, eyes and mouth wide as can be, and he starts to scream over and over again. Horrible ear-splitting shrieks. He drops the head in the dust at Indy's feet and runs off screaming as if he'll never stop, vanishing into the jungle. Indy looks to the others. Everybody's in shock.
You can turn back.
He meets Peter's gaze. In the look that passes between them, we can see there's no way either of them are backing down. Indy turns tight to camera, gazing with intense purpose at the huge entrance to the temple. Whoa, wait. Don't we get a vote?
It's not a democracy.
And he exits frame. Marion glares at Peter, rifle aimed.
That should make you feel right at home.
The group follows Indy. Turner glances down at the decapitated head and hurries after them. Interior of the great stone temple, and they enter through the massive open doorway, leaving daylight behind. They move along the raging rapids of the aqueduct, and as their eyes adjust, huge shapes appear in the darkness. Dozens of giant wheels are being spun at great speed by the rapids, each wheel at least 50 feet tall. They're in a single long row down the aqueduct, one after the other, mounted on a line of support gantries.
Water wheels? Heels?
Indy moves closer.
Wheels.
The gantries appear metallic.
Turbines.
Impossible.
Descending from arrays of connectors on each gantry are a series of solid gold conduits, as thick as a man's wrist, running across the floor in long weaving patterns. Viewed from high above, the floor of this place would look like a giant computer chip schematic. Indy follows the humming conduits and finds a dead man on the floor, body still smoking, the ashes of the hand gripping a conduit. Indy crouches as the others gather.
Pablo.
Or if he said he touched the gold and was consumed by the fire of the gods.
Indy picks up a pebble and tosses it on the conduit. The pebble explodes with a flash and puff of smoke.
Yeah, Pablo. Electrocuting. Those gold rails are conductors. This whole place is like a massive power generating plant.
Everybody's wrestling to accept something patently impossible.
No, that can't be. This city is at least 10,000 years old. They wouldn't have had such technology. They couldn't.
Generating power for what?
Don't step on the rails.
They proceed down the huge corridor of wheels, encountering more and more bodies along the way. Some are ash like Pablo, others merely skeletal, cobwebby remains, all long dead. At the point where the wheels end, they turn a corner into a long, dark corridor. Indy inches cautiously into the gloom.
I don't need a torch.
And an overhead fixture starts to glow. The light is dim and greenish. Indy glances to the others, astonished. As they proceed, the overhead fixtures track them as if by motion sensor. The ones ahead start to glow as they approach, the ones behind them dimming back to darkness. The walls are lined with hieroglyphs on both sides. Images depict human slaves constructing the city. Priests and acolytes praying to flaming fireballs in the sky. Blood sacrifices, strange, tall, inhuman forms. The group emerges into a huge antechamber, which really blows their minds. It's like a huge warehouse crammed with stuff. They move down the aisle, increasingly stunned. If you took the contents of the dozen best museums of antiquity in the world and dumped them here, well, it would be a drop in the bucket. There are artifacts from every ancient era, from all over the world, heaped helter-skelter.
Madre de Dios, I am the wealthiest man in the world.
The others are looking around numb, trying to absorb it all.
Macedonian, Egyptian, Celtic,
Sumerian, Etruscan, and Greek.
Roman, Babylonian.
Indy stops, seeing primitive stone tools, picks one up.
Prehistoric. Stone Age.
He's blown away. His gaze goes to an intact Egyptian skiff, leafed with gold and hung with cobwebs, oars still in place. Nearby are rows of gorgeously painted Egyptian sarcophagi.
Must be dreaming.
no dream. It's a mother-lode. Artifacts from every ancient era of mankind. There's not a museum in the world that wouldn't sell its soul.
Try a dozen museums. 100.
How can this be? How could they gather this from all over the world? From so many different ages?
He looks to Indy for answers.
One thing's for sure. They were collectors. Like us.
Marion steps into frame, cocks her head, looks there. Down at the end of the aisle is an ornate archway leading to another room. The archway is a startling relief of solid gold depicting celestial bodies. Indy leads the way. The chamber of the gods, and they enter. It's dark, just the light spilling through the door. The room is big, though not as huge as the antechamber they just left. And it's round. Hammer moves to the center of the room where a round gold bas-relief occupies the floor.
A celestial map. These stars, it's a Pleiades system. The Pleiades system.
You mean the Pleiades system?
That too.
And no sooner has he spoken than dim greenish light begins to glow from fixtures set to the curved walls. But more astonishing than the fixtures is what they reveal. 13 thrones are spaced in a wide circle around us. On the thrones covered with cobwebs and the dust of ages sit 13 crystal skeletons, all missing their heads. All eyes go to Indy. He looks down at the skull in his hand, looks back to the skeletons, and moves forward, wondering which skeleton the skull belongs to. And he pauses, expression going slack. He raises the skull, cocks his head as if listening. Then his gaze shifts to a specific skeleton and he veers towards it.
How do you know which one?
It told me.
Marion and the others trade ominous looks. Indy mounts the steps to the base of the throne, pauses. He lifts the crystal skull to the skeleton's shoulders and finds that it slots perfectly in place. Click. Ephemeral ripples of light begin in the skull, swirling down the body, dancing and flowing as delicately as smoke. The skeleton, now complete, glows from within. Indy backs away, gasping. Everybody shies back. Oxley loses it completely, throwing himself to the floor in a fetal ball, writhing and moaning in a meltdown of mindless terror. Placing the skull was like fitting a key in a lock, because a deep rumble begins. The huge bas relief of the Pleiades in the middle of the floor starts to open, rising out like the lens of the camera. Everybody scatters out of the way as the floor just keeps opening, wider and wider, steam and brilliant light rising from below, along with something big, a massive dark shape. Rising up higher and higher, looming. We get a sense of machinery humming beneath the floor, not primitive stone mechanisms, but machines. Indy glances into the glowing pit, gets a brief impression of engineered technology. Lights descending into a blinding pit of hydraulic rams, gears, superstructure, and whoop. The shape comes to a stop, its round base perfectly fitting the hole in the floor, shutting out the light and sound from below. What's risen into view is a thick circular column of exotic machine design, fitting from floor to ceiling. Bringing the column are 13 seats facing outward, suggesting futuristic astronaut blast seats, otherworldly and remarkable. But even more remarkable are the 13 aliens seated in them. They're facing out, their lines of sight matching the ring of crystal skeletons facing in, a skeleton per alien. Andy and the others gather, gazing up at the alien opposite the glowing skeleton. It's been dead so long, it's mummified. It's humanoid, but taller, some 10 feet in height, gangly and angular, with an array of ridges and spines spreading from its neck and skull like an exotic headdress. Like the crystal skeletons, the mummy is covered with cobwebs. Indy notices dusty, transparent tubes running out of the column and the seats, plugged into the creature's desiccated flesh. Andy reaches out, feeling one of the creature's fingers. It snaps off softly in his hand, falling to dust at his feet.
What are they?
I don't know. But they've been dead a long time.
Fuck.
They turn. The shimmering light in the room is growing brighter because the crystal skeleton is gaining brilliance, swirls of light rippling and coursing through its form. They shield their eyes as the light gathers most intensely in the skull, and twin beams of light shoot over their heads to the skeleton's eyes and the alien mummies, the two now connected by supernatural force. Indy notices with dread that the tubes sunken into the alien's flesh have begun seeping fluids.
I've got a bad feeling about this.
And a massive booming voice suddenly fills the room. Anung Anrama, Amandul Amandu Nabaya, Anung Anrama.
Where's that coming from?
Turner backs away, pointing. It's the weird guy. Everybody turns, angle on the group. As Oxley rises up into frame, facing camera, arms held aloft, weird glowing vapor streaming from his nose and mouth, hair billowing against gravity as if underwater. The man we know is gone. What remains is a conduit of unearthly power. As we watch, his eyes roll slowly up in his head until the pupils vanish completely. Only the whites are not visible. His mouth opens, a living microphone for the gods, voice continuing to echo and boom. To the sacred place we welcome you. And he turns to face the group. More and more glowing vapor is forming, streaming to Oxley from the alien mummy and the crystal skeleton, forming rivulets that swirl about his body and create vague, wispy shapes in the air above his head.
Who are you?
And when Oxley speaks, streams of vapor exhale from his nose and mouth, forming shapes that dissipate in the air before their eyes like an opium addict's dream. We are the ones who fell from the heavens. We are the Nephilim. We are the Rubazon. We are the lights in the sky. Your kind has given us many names. You may worship us.
Thank you. Your worshipfulness.
Peter moves forward, eyes gleaming.
When did you come here?
When our kind was very old, and your kind was very young. And now the vapor flows in ever more distinct images in the air above the Oxley/alien's head, dizzying star clusters being traversed at inconceivable speeds, arriving at the slowly spinning ball of planet Earth, descending towards what would later be the Yucatan Peninsula and South America, racing over parched, arid landscapes, and the vapor transforms into primitive ape men, throwing themselves, shrieking to the ground in terror as awesome booming lights ripple across the sky. We nurtured you, enhanced you, set you on the path to civilization, gave you knowledge of the stars. And the vapor forms the great stone Mayan calendar. You came to love us, fear us. Your worship provided us much that we needed to survive. And the calendar swirls into a Mayan priest wearing a grand headdress patterned after the ridges and pines of the aliens' heads, eyes wide in fervor as he plunges a ceremonial dagger into the chest of a screaming human sacrifice. From the chest swirling up and is inhaled by an alien. And when our time was passing, when our bodies began to die, we placed our godly essence into the 13 sacred vessels. And the vapor transforms into the 13 crystal skulls floating in the air. They descend, settling upon the shoulders of 13 crystal skeletons. That we might someday be reborn when others of our kind came to claim us. The image breaks apart, flowing and reforming into the head of the alien itself, floating above Oxley like the great and powerful Oz, matching Oxley's movements as, you have broken our slumber. Do you bring all the skulls that were taken from this place?
Well, not exactly.
Then why are you here?
Damn it, Travis.
I'm here. We came seeking knowledge.
The alien pauses, pondering. Yes, you always were an inquisitive species. It is your strength and your weakness. And glowing vapor streams from his image out to Indy and the group, swirling among them, probing. There are 5 among you, 5 with the greatest need, the greatest thirst for knowledge. All that there is to gain. You are like the priests who spilled the rivers of blood in our name. And the vapor encircles the 5. Peter, then Yuri, Von Graun, Escalante, finally Indy. The vapor glows brighter. You are the 5. You are the chosen. And the 5 men are lifted into the air and brought before the alien. They hover there, engulfed in a forming cloud of vapor and brilliance, but more than mere light. The cloud growing around them is the place of dreams. They stare into the swirling promise of all the knowledge in the cosmos, stunned by it, hypnotized, blown away. In that seething cauldron lies all the power and glory in the universe. Hama and Turner watch agape. Marion steps closer, terrified.
Indy?
Indy, Peter, and the others hover there, eyes wide, breath gone, gazing into the furnace of the gods. A whisper.
Marion, it's
It's what?
it's everything.
Eddie, no, don't touch it. Don't.
But the 5 men are in the grip of fervor, each in his own zone of the swirling cloud, each man seeing different things specific to them taking shape in the vapor. The alien now speaking in 13 mingled voices. What is your hunger, you 5? What is it you seek? Von Graun's zone.
So it's true. I have only to wish, and it will be so.
You have only to wish.
I wish for the past, to see our greatness risen from the ashes, to reclaim the glory that was ours.
And we hear the sound of marching boots approaching like distant thunder. The vapor now fanning into an endless row of parade banners moving proudly past us, bearing swastika after swastika. And growing from the netherworld come 10,000 voices chanting Sieg Heil, Sieg Heil, Sieg Heil, while the voice of a madman screams Deutschland erwache, Escalante zone.
I seek power. No more than power. People must cower before me. I want to be feared. I want
Peter's zone.
knowledge, more than any man can ever have, more than any man can ever know, more than
Indy's zone.
I could ever possibly dream of.
Marion is dimly seen and heard just beyond the boundary of the fully formed dream cloud, voice distorted and distant.
Indeed.
It's all here, Marion. All that there ever was, all that there ever will be. All I could ever want.
Don't look at it. Turn away.
Anything you wish, Indiana Jones, you have but to choose.
Indeed.
And her voice makes him hesitate. He looks to her, sees her image swimming like a fading mirage outside the cloud. But he turns away from her, staring again into the glory before him, blinking like a man in a dream, wanting it so badly, face gleaming with ultimate desire. Outside the dream cloud,
Indy, please don't leave me.
she can hear all their voices garbled like drowning men in a cloud of dreams, mingling, echoing, overlapping, wanting, working towards a crescendo.
To be the most feared of all, the most deadly. All the knowledge there is more than any man can know.
Indie zone.
Anything
Anything. Choose.
I want. I want.
It takes everything he's got in him, but he pulls his eyes away from all the wonder before him and turns looking back to Marion. Their eyes meet. His smile to her is beautiful, both sad and joyful, because in his heart he knows, and his look says it all. He wants Marion. And suddenly, boom, Indy is released from the dream cloud, slamming to the cold stone floor. Marion rushes to him and drops to his side, both of them looking up as Von Braun's zone.
I want the dream reborn. I want the glory recreated.
The vapor of von Braun's wish takes final shape, the face of the alien flowing like smoke and reforming into the glorious smiling visage of Adolf Hitler himself. Very well, you shall have all the glory you created. And Hitler's smile becomes the toothy grimace of a leering demonic skull. Von Braun starts screaming as De Fuhrer's ectoplasmic hand forms a vicious talon. It reaches out, sinks into Von Braun's disgusting black heart, and sucks the life force right out of him in a crunch of collapsing bones. Peter's zone. You shall have more knowledge than any man can know. And the vapor infuses Peter's body, streaming up his nose and mouth into his brain.
Yes. Yes. I see it all. Oh, my God. I know everything.
And he screams as his head begins to swell, expanding far beyond its capacity. And the top of his head erupts as his life force is sucked out to Escalante's zone. You shall be the most feared and deadly. And the vapor infuses El Presidente, reshaping and shrinking him as he screams, sucking his life force right out through his pores until all that's left of him is, outside the cloud, a tiny black and red poison arrow frog that plops onto the stone floor in front of Indy and Marion. It hops away past them as they stare in astonishment. The stolen life forces of the three men whoosh 1, 2, 3 over Indy's and Marion's heads, sucked into the exotic alien machinery of the column of seats. Indy's gaze drops to the mummified alien in its seat. The machinery is humming louder now, powered by the stolen life forces, the fluids pumping faster. As Indy and the others watch, the desiccated flesh of the alien is becoming more supple, fuller, more alive. In fact, the alien mummy is beginning to stir, to move. All that remains is the dream cloud now is Yuri. Yuri Makovsky, choose. Indy's eyes desperately go to Marion's rifle. He grabs it from her, sits up, works the bolt.
Cover your eyes,
Right.
because I don't know what's going to happen.
And he shoulders it, taking careful aim at the crystal skull, sitting atop the crystal skeleton. Jones, No, this could be ours. Think of the power. Think of the possibilities.
Bam.
And blam, Indy pulls the trigger. The crystal skull is shot right between the eyes, exploding into a fantastic shower of spinning crystalline fragments. And an incredible amount of energy erupts as the glowing light is released. The essence of the gods. It pours upward from the shoulders of the crystal skeleton, roaming off the ceiling and blazing in all directions. The dream cloud vanishes with a concussive bang, slamming nearly to the floor. The essence of the gods is like living fire, ripping through the air above our heroes' heads, careening off walls, blazing into the column of alien seats, and crackling down through its machinery like live current. Quick cut angles, and the living fire zaps through areas of the ship our heroes will never see, cracking down corridors and blazing through banks of machines that might be computers, activating systems and mechanisms that may have lain dormant for untold ages. Chamber of the gods, and the whole goddamn place begins to shake. Andy pushes to his feet, grabbing Marion and the others, shoving them towards the door. Massive blocks of stone now ripping loose and plummeting from the ceiling. Andy pauses at the door, looking back, realizing Professor Oxley is still there. The old man's kneeling on the floor, an empty vessel now, too exhausted to rise. Oxley looks up, meets Indy's eyes, and smiles. He's fully himself again. Not a wild man, not a conduit, just Vernon Oxley. Indy, my boy, run! There's no way Indy's leaving him there. He dashes back into the chamber, determined to save him, but stops as the alien, now more flesh and blood than mummy, rises from its seat, tubes ripping free. It looms up behind Oxley. The old man senses it, turns, and looks up. The creature reaches down, wraps a hand around Oxley's throat, and lifts him into the air. It brings Oxley face to face, vapor swirling between their mouths, and starts to suck Oxley's life force out. Oh no.
Hey,
The alien pauses, turning. Indy is shouldering the carbine, taking carefully and finger on the trigger.
welcome to Earth.
And blam, blam, blam. He empties the clip into the creature, driving it back into the shadows. Oxley drops to the floor. Indy dashes in and grabs him.
Move it, Jones.
Yeah, you're the boss.
And they run like hell. Moments later, the ceiling collapses behind them, sealing the alien away forever. Antechamber of artifacts. The group runs up the aisle as the place comes down around their ears. Chunks of stone are tearing loose from the ceiling high above, letting in daylight, plummeting like artillery shells into the amazing artifacts all around them. Low angle of floor as a tiny black and red frog comes hopping up the aisle, chirping in panic. Indy and the others come running up behind it. Indy's foot stomps it flat as they pass by. Reverse angle as the group races away from us. Turner looks back appalled. Jones, you just stomped the president of Peru. They keep running as the rumbling and shaking grows worse, now a veritable earthquake.
What's happening?
Something bad. We got to get as far away from here as possible. Fast.
How?
Indy skids to a stop as inspiration strikes. He grabs the Egyptian skiff, wrestling it off its mount. Everybody pitches in, pushing and pulling it desperately up the aisle, the corridor of wheels, and out to the aqueduct where the row of giant wheels ends. They tip the boat onto the sloping aqueduct wall, poising the prow above the raging rapids. They throw themselves in the boat and slide down, swept off in the blink of an eye. Exterior of the great stone temple bay. Traveling with the skiff as it comes bursting out of a huge tunnel into blinding, beautiful daylight, shooting the rapids, everybody holding on for dear life, as the great stone temple drops away fast, receding behind them. And in the same shot, our camera rises into the air, tracking them down the thundering river. And our camera keeps rising further and further, up and up until the skiff is a tiny speck being swept along. And still we rise, still in the same shot, until we have a bird's eye view of the Valley of Dreams below us, the cause of the earthquake now apparent. We see parts of the valley is rising up in an enormous disc shape, perfectly round and a mile wide in diameter. The skiff barely makes it past the edge, sailing off down the river as the disc shape rises, lifting the landscape with it. Jungle, ruins, everything. Whatever's under all that dirt has been buried there a long time. Long enough that the city was built on top of it then thousands of years ago. Traveling with the skiff as the object rises massively behind the boat, straight up in the air, cascading a million tons of dirt and rock, raining ancient ruins and countless trees. Indy and the others look back, and in that gray storm of raining soil, they get a vague impression of the underside of the saucer and its mind-boggling scale. There's a trio of round spinning lights, each the size of a football stadium, that comprise some extraordinary and unfathomable propulsion system. The engines are thrumming unevenly, struggling. The saucer keeps rising straight up, 1,000 feet now and still climbing. Our skiff is being swept on by the rapids, gaining more distance with every passing moment. And just when it seems the saucer may keep rising forever, the struggling engines fail, sending strange bursts of lightning exploding outward and spreading across the smooth underside of the giant alien craft. And the saucer starts dropping straight back, into the very pit from which it rose, 1 trillion tons plummeting back to Earth. The gods themselves are falling from the heavens. And our group goes sailing over a small waterfall, everybody spilling into the water as the boat flies apart. And it's the sudden drop in terrain that saves them, because the saucer impacts with inconceivable force and explodes with a nuclear flash that turns the Valley of Dreams into a pit of slag. Flight 2, exterior top of cliff, day. And Indy and the others climb up from the river below, soaked to the bone. They turn, gazing back. The Valley of Dreams is now billowing into the sky as a mushroom cloud. Indy and Yuri look at each other. Yuri smiles and starts laughing harder and harder. What's the joke?
We are the joke. After all that, to come away empty-handed.
Not empty-handed. Not by a long shot. We're alive. Older, maybe wiser. That's something, isn't it?
Yuri sees the truth in this. He nods, offers Indy his hand.
See you around.
Beat. Marion, Turner, and Hama trade glances, waiting to see what Indy will do. Indy steps forward, smiling, and nails Yuri with the all-time haymaker of punches. Yuri's feet leave the ground as he drops. Indy glares down at him intense.
Not if I see you first. Stay out of my country.
Indy leads the others away. Yuri wipes blood from his nose and starts to laugh. He hollers after them.
It was hell of a chase, my friend. Adventure still has a name.
Indy's group moves down the ridge, Yuri's laughter echoing through the hills behind them. As they exit frame, we hold on the mushroom cloud in the distance.
On behalf of a grateful nation for heroic action in foiling a Soviet plot that resulted in the accidental detonation of a stolen atomic bomb in the jungle of Peru.
Interior auditorium, day. Tied on Indy wearing a tuxedo, a little embarrassed, anxious to get through this.
It is my great pleasure to award Dr. Henry Jones, Jr. the highest civilian honor our country can bestow, the Congressional Gold Medal.
The speaker steps up, places the gold medal around Indy's neck. It's President Eisenhower. The crowd cheers. Eisenhower shakes Indy's hand and poses, smiling for the flashing cameras.
Anything you'd like to say, Dr. Jones?
Indy glances to the side. Osgood Turner gives Indy a nod and a little thumbs up. Go on, pal. Say something.
Mr. President, there are only 2 words I'd like to say today.
Cut to interior church, day.
I do.
He turns to Marion, lifts her bridal veil, and kisses her. Exterior church. And they come running down the steps in a hail of rice to the sound of wedding bells. Exterior wedding reception, night. And we find them on the dance floor that night, exhausted but happy, dancing to a live orchestra. A female vocalist is singing an old Monterey. Well-wishers keep drifting by, interrupting them with their congratulations. And as a couple departs, Indy's eyes bug out as somebody suddenly gives him a crushing bear hug from behind, lifting him off the ground. When his feet land, he turns to see Sala, drunk and ebullient, accompanied by Henry Sr. Sala is singing along with the orchestra.
Long for the sweetheart that I left in Monterey. Oh, my friends, my heart is bursting with joy. You see, I always knew you belong together. It was written
now,
in the
Sala.
stars. Oh.
No.
You can still talk.
Oh, yes. I always knew you belonged together. It was written in the stars. I've had a lot to drink.
Guess you. Sure, you have. I guess you have. You could say that.
Marion kisses Sala. Henry shoves Sala aside. Indy's shocked to find his father also drunk, face streaming with tears.
Look at them. Aren't they beautiful?
He stuns Indy even more by throwing his arms around him.
I'm so proud of you, son. So proud. In fact, I'm going to sing a song at your wedding.
Dad, that's not really necessary.
But the old man's gone. Andy turns back to Marion with trepidation. They keep dancing. Andy glances apprehensively to the stage as the singer finishes and hands the microphone to Henry, who does something to the band leader. The band launches into the intro of Fly Me to the Moon.
Never seen him like that. Or heard him sing before.
Oh, come on, I bet it's not so bad.
Andy's not so sure. He glances over and sees Professor Oxley seated at a table in his tweedy suit, nursing a glass of white wine. The old fellow's looking a bit wan in the aftermath of his ordeal, but is definitely himself again. He catches Andy's eye, raises his glass into toast. Andy and Marion smile warmly back, and everybody winces, including Oxley, as Henry starts singing, Boy, is he terrible.
Fly me to the moon. Let me sail among the stars. Let me see what spring is like on Jupiter and Mars.
You lost that bet.
But he's happy. That's what counts.
Right.
The camera closes in, moving tighter and tighter on our dancing couple as
So, Mr. Jones,
Yes. Mrs. Jones?
there's something you never told me. Something I need to know.
Uh-oh. What's that?
Back in the Lost City, when you were in that dream cloud, what did you see in there?
Andy hesitates, trying to find the words.
It was like seeing everything in the universe all at once. Like suddenly knowing all the secrets there are to know. The meaning of it all.
So, why didn't you take it? All that fortune and glory.
I did.
She looks up at him, not getting it. By now, we're very tight.
What I saw in the dream cloud was you. I saw you. You're my fortune and glory, kid.
Marion melts. As they come together for a kiss, Angle drifts past them through all the dancing couples. And we close in to find Oxley alone at his table in the corner, unnoticed by all, amusing himself by making the silverware dance and twirl on the table before him like the couples on the dance floor, using only the power of his mind. Amused and amused, he glances up towards the sky, and we tilt up off his look to the millions of stars shining like diamonds above. And as a series of shooting stars streak across the night sky, we fade out.
Yes! Why did we get Crystal Skull when this script existed? George Lucas, you're fucking crazy. Anyway, yeah. Right
We
there.
choose this,
Anyway,
George, anytime.
we
Nice hat, Ann.
We went this script, not the crazy batshit that actually happened. Anyway, everyone did a wonderful job. I love the script so much. Have a wonderful night.